City of Yamhill Budget Committee meeting to order Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025 at 6:02 p.m. Can we get a roll call, starting with Mr. Davis, and we'll just come around the table?
Davis here.
Terp here.
Mike Wofford here.
Kara Corrigan here.
Wofford here.
Steele here.
Graven here.
Featherston here.
Corrigan here.
Kent here.
Barron here.
Esky here.
Okay. And then we have introductions that we'll be turning over to our budget officer for introductions.
So here we have accumulated a combination of the city council and the budget and 4 private citizens, which are all made up as the budget committee. That will include Patty Perrin, Kim Kind, Shay Corrigan, Chris Featherston, Mike Wofford, Paula Terp, and Robert Davis. Also Tim Askey. And then city staff present are Greg Graven, Kim Steele, Jason Wofford, Kara Corrigan, and Angie Fowler. In new business, we do need to elect a budget committee chair.
Nominate Mike Wofford.
Corrigan second.
No.
Not this year?
Not this year. 3 years was good. Oh, come on. I nominate Paula. Come on, you're qualified, dude. Go ahead. Second Paula.
Corrigan second.
Do we have a vote, starting with Mr. Davis again? Oh, well, we should ask, Mr. Would you be willing to accept the nomination?
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Where were we? We're gonna vote on whether or not we would like Ms. Paula Terp to be our budget officer or budget chair.
All in favor?
Which, if we can say, so it's easier for the minutes, if we can say last name and then how you vote would be great.
Davis, aye.
Terp, aye.
Wofford, aye.
Corrigan, aye.
Wofford, aye.
Steele, aye.
Graven, aye.
Featherston, aye.
Corrigan, aye.
Kent I.
Barron,
Esky, aye.
Congratulations.
Okay then. I guess I need this in front of me. Mike?
And then we do need to elect a budget vice chair as well.
Nominate Robert.
Second.
Corrigan, you second?
Mhm.
Okay, can we get a vote for vice chair Davis potentially?
Robert, aye.
Terp, aye.
Wofford, aye.
Corrigan, aye.
Wofford, aye. Steele, aye.
Graven, aye.
Featherston, aye.
Corrigan, aye.
Kent I.
Barron, aye.
Esky, aye.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't. Do you do that?
Yeah, I think I won the rest of the meeting.
Yep.
So last time, if you were at the meeting a couple weeks ago, we got handed the minutes from last year. If not, I think she sent out a link. So we need to approve them from last year. Can I get a,
Make motion, we approve the budget committee minutes from 23, 24.
Corrigan, second. 24, 25.
24, 25, sorry about that.
Corrigan, second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can I get a vote?
Davis, aye.
Terp, aye.
Wofford, aye.
Corrigan, aye.
Wofford, aye.
Steele, aye.
Graven.
Featherston, aye.
Corrigan, aye.
Kent I.
Barron, aye.
Esky, aye.
Sorry, Pam, didn't mean to cut you off. So we have in front of us, everybody has the budget. And at the last meeting, we were told that Sherry was the budget officer. Are we now, is Kara, are you the budget officer?
Yes. I have been but I believe I've been voted the budget.
Council on Sunday night had a meeting, and I think it's quite reasonable to have a conversation now about this, that it was brought to our attention through budget forecasting by our city administrator that we were facing a significant budget shortfall for this year of $300,000.
Right.
And she brought to council the three options to resolve that so that we could get to a balanced budget so we could continue our meeting. This is why the meeting last week was postponed. Council met in executive session with assistance from the city legal department. We talked about the three options that were given to us on how to resolve that to come to a balanced budget. The options we were given were presented by the city administrator. And one of the options was to eliminate the position of city administrator from our budget. As we finished our executive session, we did not vote. We spoke with city legal and CIS and decided to vote at a later date. After consulting lawyers, we set that date for Sunday night. We had a meeting where in a vote of 2-3, 2 nay, 3 aye, we removed the city administrator from her position as suggested to resolve our budget issue.
What a way to spend Easter.
It was pretty awesome. It was terrible.
Yeah.
So the housekeeping things that occurred during that period of time was we had to, for this meeting, have a budget officer so that we could get a balanced budget put together with a budget message. Council, I believe unanimously elected our finance manager as the budget officer. I, as her husband, abstained from the vote and removed myself from the table, sat in the gallery for the vote, and then returned to run the meeting afterwards. And that's where we are, as budget goes, that's where we are with that.
So I have a question, Mayor.
Uh-huh.
How does eliminating a $100,000 budget cover almost $400,000 shortfall?
We'll go into the details of that in a little bit, but you have to also take a look at the fact that I believe it was at 105. Are we allowed to discuss? Are there rules on discussing salary? I don't think we can we? At any rate, what we can say is that base pay is different than total
No, I.
payout from the city. When you add in things like if there were to be comp time or holiday pay and PERS, that can as much as double that number. And so again, those numbers being run by our city administrator, those were the numbers that were used to create
So we're
that.
close to 200,000 out of $383,000 shortfall.
The $383,000 was an inaccurate representation. It was closer to 3.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good news.
Okay.
And then we've also, Officer Miller put in his resignation, not having anything to do with this, it's just something that happened. He was offered another job with a different department, which then freed up from our budget almost all of the remainder. And then our consultant Ross and our finance manager were able to find and transfer monies around, which we'll go over in just a moment on how to fix the rest of that shortcoming so that we can start with a balanced budget, because where we were, that's why that meeting had to be canceled. There was, you can't present a budget that doesn't balance. And we were unable to do that at that point in time.
Right.
I can tell you that there was nobody on council that was excited to make that decision. And it throws a lot more work on all of us and a lot more work on the city staff. So that was not anything that was taken lightly, and there was 0 decisions made that were not 110% budgetary. And if anything, I would like to commend the former CA for offering that as an option, as self-preservation is a thing most people possess.
Mhm.
And she definitely threw herself in as one of the 3
Oh,
options.
yes, you did.
So
Okay. Well, thank you for your explanation. Clears up a lot.
anybody has any other questions, or even privately or whatever, just let me know. We can for sure talk about that.
All right. Kara, it's all you.
All right. So before I read the budget message, I do also want to point out that when we are discussing budget, as I'm sure all of you know, there are multiple funds within the budget, and the city as a whole is perfectly fine. We have plenty of money. It was the general fund specifically that we were short in. And my budget message will explain how and why. However, I just want to make that clear that the water fund, the sewer fund, sidewalks, all of those are perfectly fine and they're thriving. Budget committee members, attached is the City of Yamhill's annual budget for the fiscal year 2025-2026. This budget has been created by city staff and meets all Oregon administrative rules and is developed in accordance with the best business practices recommended by GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Procedures, Gatsby, Governmental Accounting Standard Board, and GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, and Oregon Department of Revenue. This budget document outlines the resources needed during the 2025-26 fiscal year to continue with our authorized construction plans, operational commitments, and future growth. The overview is preparing for minimal growth and improving our ability to supply water to the city of Yamhill are the two major drivers for expenditures in the coming year. Rehab of current infrastructure is a continued focus, as well as meeting the needs of planned growth, also account for some interest increases in the water fund, sewer fund, and general fund. It should be noted that the proposed budget does not contemplate a cost of living wage increase for staff. With respect to city services billing, water and sewer rates are not expected to increase in 2025-2026. However, a $2 per customer bill is proposed to assist in the funding and maintenance of our city's parks. A discussion also needs to occur regarding adjusting the amount of the current police services fee. When added together, all funds budgeted in 2024-2025 was $6,886,521. And the budget for the 2025-2026 has increased to $10,419,726. Beginning balances this year when combined are $3,312,702, and contingencies and unappropriated ending balances in the coming year are $2,476,668. This shows that the city's cash position is forecast to decrease by approximately $836,034. There is a graph there that I put together that shows you basically last year budgeting to this year budgeting. Most everything is staying pretty flat. There is obviously a little bit of a decrease in the general fund, and there is a very dramatic increase in the water fund due to the possibility of some grant options. So the general fund accounts for 6 different departments at the city. The budget projects general fund expenses by separate departments, but all resources are accounted for in one budget area. So the breakout for the revenue and expenses by the area are revenue of $925,359, expenses across the board, underneath that, admin, council, court, police, parks, planning, will total $925,359. This budget does not include a city administrator. To give this year's budget context, the 2023-2024 and the 2024-2025 budgets must be reviewed for the ending and beginning balances respectively. In 2023-2024, a forecast was completed in April that indicated the beginning balance for 2024-2025 would be approximately $386,000. As the year concluded, an unexpected charge for PERS back contributions, approximately $125,000, and unbudgeted expenses for IT services, approximately $70,000, and other ins and outs made the beginning balance for this year from the audit just over $3,000. This number was not known until the audit was received in March of 2025. In response to this missed budget, the city has used contingency from discretionary funds via anticipated supplemental budgets and other cost cutting to begin the budget for fiscal year 2025, and we will start at a zero fund balance in the general fund. To ensure that loans from other funds are replaced, as part of the proposed supplemental budgets discussed above, the attached 2025-2026 budget will not replace one police officer position who recently resigned to go to another agency, nor the city administrator position that council cut in fiscal year 2024-2025. It is also necessary that the city research optional funding for the police department to assist with generating revenue for the general fund. At this time, public safety expenses for the city is more than the revenue brought in by our tax base. We understand that this is not sustainable for Yamhill's future. Utilities. Utilities supported by the city of Yamhill are expected to cost the city roughly $6,820,977. Total costs will be covered by grants as well as rates and fees that are charged for services and new construction. Total water funds at $6,140,005 is about 60% of the city's budget. The water fund is now solely supporting its debt service of $210,000 annually on 2 water loans. The city is also anticipating a substantial grant from FEMA for the construction of a new water holding tank that the city desperately needs. With continued focus on capital improvements, the city is looking at $4,098,780 in projects for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, and contingency will decrease from $634,022 in 2025 to $573,318 in 2025-2026. Water rates increased in fiscal year 2023-24 to align with current needs for capital improvement. No increases are anticipated for fiscal year 2025-2026. Water production was at 91 million gallons, which is down from last year of 100 million. This number reflects a substantial number of leaks that have been fixed throughout the city by Public Works, as well as a voluntary water curtailment in the late summer, early fall of 2024. Planned capital projects for the water fund include the water holding tank, the finish up to the 3rd Street project, which will be Olive, Camellia, and Moores Valley, tie line feasibility, and the intake structure. In the sewer fund is up this year compared to last budget year by about $130,206 due to only one capital project planned during fiscal year 24-25. Planned capital projects for the sewer fund this year are Ellie's Lift Station, continued disinfection 1.4, South Cedar Street. South Cedar Street has been included as a capital project this year that will work hand in hand with a future stormwater project. Sewer rates will not increase in fiscal year 25-26, and user fee revenues will increase slightly with the completion of the Park Meadows estates. The street fund budget is $370,737 with continued work to take place in the maintenance and upkeep of city streets. In other funds, it is being proposed that the sidewalk fund is to be absorbed by the street fund. In the 2024-2025 budget, a new fund for stormwater was created to pair with the stormwater SDC fund for future stormwater projects. A transfer out of the sewer fund and into the stormwater fund accounts for revenue collected beginning fiscal year 2022 to 2023. In summary, the city of Yamhill continues to strive to provide quality services while looking towards future needs that will ensure a quality environment for its citizens. Thank you.
I asked to get the transfer out of the sewer fund into the stormwater.
It is, when we get there, the sewer fund transfer out page is on 47. You'll see the transfer out to the storm fund of $23,813. That is 2 years worth of storm fees that were not transferred out last year.
$2
At $2 per billing cycle.
per billing cycle.
Correct.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Not a lot of money, but some. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back and look at budget calendar. Does anybody have any questions? It's page 11. in Your book.
Yeah, I found some discrepancies in it that weren't adequate. The information that I saw previous to wherever it was before.
This has not been updated since all they did.
Right, right. So I crossed out the ones that showed the meeting before that, before now. So that's the only thing I have to say about that.
Yeah, they just need to take that out. It's fine. We're at the April 22nd and the rest of it. If we need a budget or another meeting after tonight, we'll talk about it and get something on the calendar.
Correct, which is the reason why it has not been updated, is because we just don't know what those dates necessarily would be.
Right. Okay, are there any other questions on the calendar?
There it is.
Do we have any public? Anybody on?
No, the public online or in the building.
Okay,
If I may, Chair, this is Ross Schultz. Hello?
Yes, we can.
go ahead.
I think that you should officially open a public hearing on the budget, ask if there's anybody there, and then officially close that public hearing. You're supposed to do that at the first budget meeting, and today it is, so.
All right, so we're are opening the public comment. Is there any public comment available? Does anybody have anything?
I do.
But you're not
You're
public.
not public.
You don't count.
I know.
Right now, you know.
I don't count.
You don't.
You're only one person, you're both.
Okay, hearing nothing, we're gonna close the public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Sure. So then we're gonna go right into staff presentations and proposed budget, and Chief, that's up to you. You're up.
I'm up.
You're up.
Want to page 23 then?
Should we go ahead and do admin first and then when we get
I
to,
think so, yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
okay,
I'm just going off of this
yes.
thing which says that you're next, but
Yes.
we can
I can do that, but.
we can go chronological, that's fine.
I can do it.
You just tell me who's turning it over to for a bit.
So I would say that probably Kim and myself can start the administration fund. Or the general fund, starting with administration.
What
And then
page are we on, please?
if we go to 17,
Okay,
and that is the administration budget. So I do want to make note down at the bottom there that the notable changes from last year, we are looking at doing a $2 per utility bill fee for parks. The reasoning for this is because we do have a lot of people that utilize our parks. However, we have very little revenue that's generated from our parks. And Public Works does maintain them and go work in them. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. And then we do also need to take a look at the police service fee, which currently sits at $5 per utility bill. That might be something we discuss raising to whatever degree could be considered reasonable.
may I ask a question on the fees that are on
Yes.
your water bill? It's my understanding, and I could be totally wrong, that if somebody doesn't pay those fees, it doesn't affect their water.
Just the
Or
police
sewer.
service. But if they don't pay their stormwater, their water can be turned off.
Oh, okay, I was
It's
not
in
aware of
that, it's in that, ordinance.
Okay,
but not in the other one.
okay, so if we add one for the parks, is that gonna be the same? Well, I guess that's a council decision, that's not us decision, sorry.
And that's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that. It would definitely be how it's phrased in terms of if the fee is accepted. So,
Okay, thanks.
Kara, can I ask a question?
yes,
In regards to the $2 a month fee, you said that the park doesn't generate a whole lot of revenue.
correct.
So how often are the park fees increased?
So we did just increase, well, they're in the process of being increased. Let me rephrase that. The master fee schedule is in the process of being readjusted and looked at, and it will be presented to council for them to confirm whether or not the master park fee schedule is accepted. We are looking at raising the park fees, and I believe it's roughly, I think we're looking at raising from like 45 to 60. However, annually, we're looking at the current rates, we look at roughly $1,400 a year that we bring in
Yeah, I was gonna
from
say
park
that's
service fees.
probably not-
And there's a lot of people who use the park that don't make a reservation.
Correct. You don't have to make a reservation to use the park because the park is a public place. You make the reservation and pay the fee if you want to be guaranteed one of the spaces at. With the increase in the, master fee schedule, if it is accepted, we're looking at probably another $400 to $600 possibly. So I set it right around $2,000.
Still not very much.
So with that being said, if you flip the page and you're looking at 18, there is the admin recap sheet. The general fund on the left-hand side, you're gonna see the revenues, which we'll go over momentarily, and then you're gonna see the expenditures underneath that. On the right-hand side, you're gonna see the reserve funds, and those reserve funds are what will be helping this year with the minimal amount of contingency that we'll need to transfer in order to cover the deficit. So those reserve funds are gonna be the ACER, the Admin Reserve Fund, the City Hall Reserve Fund, the Police Vehicle Reserve Fund, Economic Development Fund, and then the Building Fund. So you've got your totals over on the right-hand side for both sides, both revenues and expenditures. The first page that you're gonna find with the Excel spreadsheets, you'll see page 19. These are the expected revenues for this year. We are starting available cash on hand. We are gonna go ahead and make a decision to put that in as 0. So that we're kind of starting with a clean slate there. All of the income is based off of what we have seen in terms of Centerpoint, what we are bringing in, what is being added into the software, and adjusted for based off of, there are a couple of months left in the year. So those should be fairly close to accurate numbers on what we expect to get, with a slight increase going into next year. And then at the bottom, you will see the highlighted portions. The highlighted portions down there are, I know it's been discussed that we might add a transient tax into the city's master fee schedule. I don't know how much that would be, and I don't know how much revenue we would get off of that because I don't believe that there are very many places in Yamhill that actually qualify for the transient tax. The city services park fee at the $12,000, that's the $2 that is being suggested, proposed. Transfer in from economic development and the transfer in from the police vehicle reserve fund to cover the deficit. And then the transfer in from the water fund down there at the bottom. When we get to water later, that will be better explained. However, if we get the FEMA grant, then it is supposed to come hand in hand with an additional admin expenses grant, which is roughly $90,000. So of that $90,000, 60 is to be spent on admin, 25 is to be spent on contract services, and 5 is to be spent on dues, travel, and training. That's how they have told us the money has to be spent if we are going to spend it. So of that 90,000, the 60,000 for admin expenses, 40 has been transferred into the general fund to account for those of us in City Hall that will be doing work like reporting, actually accepting the grant, et cetera. And I have left 20,000 in the water fund to cover what Jason has to do for the grant specifically as well.
So from what I understand of the verbiage in that grant, that will also cover potentially out of the 90,000, some of our engineers. It
The
could cover,
25,000 for contract services,
Okay.
yes, can cover engineering
but I
costs.
believe admin can be partially taken from that too. That's how it was explained to me.
Is it?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it could also be used for lawyers if we needed.
I haven't seen the actual paperwork with it written. I was told that this is what the breakdown is, so that's what I'm going off of. So if we do get that grant, then the expectation is that we will transfer that 40,000 into the general fund to cover admin expenses in-house. For whoever at City Hall, I know that I specifically will be, but whoever at City Hall will be helping and assisting with the process of that grant.
And just to finish up on that grant is we signed the final paperwork about 10 days ago
Okay,
for FEMA.
okay,
So I signed if you're gonna ask for a request, you have to request the grant. So we did that. And, the governor made a statement yesterday that the state FEMA money has been released federally. So I would imagine, with FEMA money being released from Doge, that we might be in a very good spot for it quickly.
okay. So your total resources down there, without your property taxes are gonna be just shy of $500,000. The next number, the 430,000 is what we are expecting to get in property taxes. That's what I'm estimating.
Is that high or low?
Is that a conservative estimate?
It's a conservative estimate. Unfortunately, we had been high in previous years, so we're gonna bring it back down and be conservative with it.
I've got a question on that number.
Yes.
If we were high and we submit that number to the county, do they increase the property taxes for next year for everybody? to
There's a
match
flat
that number?
rate.
No.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yeah,
I know we went to the flat rate.
there's a
back in the
flat
late
rate,
90s.
exactly. There is a flat rate that we,
It's a permanent tax rate.
yeah.
Mhm.
So you can anticipate, obviously, property taxes annually going up slightly. I think it's about 3%. However, we don't get to say or adjust what we're expecting our revenue today to be. That is set by county, and county actually will tell us what we should expect to get.
So that leads to my next question,
Okay.
is this number then based on the revenue collected for 24-25 plus 3%?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not counting any extra houses that we think might be built or any of that?
No, we are, so the numbers that the county gave us to go off of, that is, if we flip back to the appendix, all the way back. If you look at page 72, this is our property tax worksheet. So that number on the right-hand side is highlighted in yellow, the 119,000. That is the number that the county gives us to estimate. Then you do the 3% increase, which is down below. So 123,000 is the number that we are utilizing to account for property taxes.
123 million.
I mean, yes, 123 million, sorry. So that's what they are saying that we have in assessed value that we could get taxes off of, and of
Okay.
that, we get a percentage. So that's where we're getting that number.
I have
Is-
one
Sorry.
more question on page 18. All of the reserve funds that we're going to use to help balance the budget, how soon do those have to be paid back? Or do they, because they're all in one?
They should be paid back. And we have discretion as to how long they are paid back, how long we take to pay them back. My opinion is I would like them to be paid back sooner than later. I think that we could probably get that done within the next couple of years.
I looked, I did not see any payback schedule in here for this year.
There is not one,
Okay, so we actually don't plan on paying them back in 25, 26.
correct?
I have a question on the transfer in from economic development, just from past experience. I'm just gonna ask to make sure that this was legally looked at and is okay.
We did, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
We looked at reserve funds, we actually looked at SDC funds, et cetera, and this was what we were
Okay.
told. We were told that touching the building fund would be off limits because of where the revenue is generated from. However, because most of the revenue that comes into the ones that we are utilizing actually comes out of the general fund to begin with. So these are monies that were transferred into these other reserve funds out of the general fund that
Except for the economic development.
yes, except for the economic
That's
development.
the only reason I'm bringing it up is because in the past, we have tried to use it and the person attached to, whose family is attached to that was very vocal about saying, no, you cannot do
Okay.
that. So I just wanted to double check to make
So-
sure that everything has been looked at.
Let me ask you a question,
Sure.
and truthfully, this is a question. So, because I've not been here, obviously, as long as some people. I do know that, for example, the loans that were given back 15 and 20 years ago, that we still have the loans available, but there were quite a few people that took the loans out through the city and paid the loans back to the city.
Mhm.
At which point do you think that that is considered part of what you're discussing, or would that be considered income that the city is generating on its own?
That's a legal question that I'm not sure about. I don't know. I know that, yes, over the years that there have been several people who have used that money and it's great. Before, when we tried to do this exact same thing as transfer it in, we were told that no, legally we cannot because it is because of where the original money came
The
from.
start came from. I will double check on that. I will reach out and I will double check on that. We were told it was okay, but I will make sure that it is.
I would.
Yeah. Obviously, we want to have all our i's dotted and our t's crossed. Getting to administration, which is on page 20. You are looking at total payroll at the top, FTE payroll costs, total personnel. And then listing down beneath there, you're gonna see what we're looking at, with materials and supplies that come through the city. This is essentially, the office staff at City Hall. And at the bottom, you're gonna see the total administration budget at $196,383. That will include 50,000 worth of contingency if we are able to do the transfer in from the reserve funds.
Why is there no proposed amounts in the administrator, county clerk, city recorder, accounting clerk?
So all of the FTE payroll has been rolled up into one number now, which means that the percentage that comes out for all city staff is $43,799 rolled up into one number.
And why is that?
It's been suggested that we go to that form of, setting it out as a line item. It's not necessarily as much of a problem in bigger cities, but in smaller cities, where when you say whoever the city court clerk is, everybody knows who the city court clerk is.
To protect her.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and are we gonna start going by this line item or is this just general?
I'm just going over,
Okay.
I'm answering questions and I'm gonna go through generalizations, and if you guys have questions, please ask.
So the FTEs for the entire general fund administration is 0.73 out of what, 4
So,
folks?
this is not the entire general fund,
No, I
because
understand, it's administration.
just an admin. So the 3 people inside City Hall, the percentage that we will get paid out of admin will be almost 1 FTE. And then there are other funds within the general fund. So the building fund and economic development, all of those also have a percentage of admin coming out of them.
Including water and sewer.
Water, sewer, I think the only one that, the city hall admin, employees does not come out of is parks and streets. Do you remember, Jason?
Parks, so I have to ask.
I know that the city administrator came out of streets, but it's not coming out of streets anymore. Parks and streets, I think, are the only two that city administrators do not come out of. So it's basically when we get, again, back to the appendix, you will see on the wage table, the very first page, 66, the percentage of each position and where it's coming out of. So for example, the office manager is gonna get paid 50% of their income out of the general fund. Because
Did you say 36?
50.
56.
Or wait, 66 in terms of page number, I apologize. So when we're looking at the wage table here, the box on the left is your percentages. So your percentages of what each person is going to get paid out of what fund. So for example, the office manager gets paid 50% out of the general fund, 25% out of water, 25% out of sewer. And then you go all the way down.
You've got a total of 15% for each of the facilities manager and utility worker one coming out of general.
So utility worker 1 and 2 coming out of the general fund, and that's the parks.
Oh, that's the parks. Of
Yes,
course.
so, yeah, so they get,
What the
the
heck?
parks sit in the general fund, and so they get paid 15% out of their paycheck comes out of the parks department in the general fund.
I was totally spacing on the parks.
Yep,
It's great.
That's enough. Much time as I see them spending down there.
We can manage.
Uh,
It's about all we can manage out of there.
Okay, thank you.
So total wages is 1,064,000.
are you looking at,
The bottom table on 66.
Oh.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah,
according
for
to this, it
everything.
would be.
Yeah,
yeah, 1,064,466. That is wages, that is benefits, that is taxes, that is everything.
Hers.
PERS, that
That's
is
all your
everything.
personnel costs.
yeah, I'm gonna compare that to the, budget by department, budget. I'm looking at page 14 and 15. Looking for that personnel services, there it is.
So what you have to take into account there, Robert, is that on those previous pages, things like overtime and pager pay are not included into those numbers because those are fluctuating and not set.
Yeah, that would make sense there. Thank you.
Let me know when everybody's ready to move on.
No more questions?
No questions for me.
Go ahead. Council, in order to, preserve some of our funding, we have unfortunately taken the community support requests out this year. Basically the numbers that are in there, have been, well, the community support, which was originally budgeted at 3,000, we've now taken out completely, and then dues, travel, training, we're dropping in half, out of the council budget.
Question for you on community support.
Yes.
If there's an outside fundraiser or something, I don't know the answer to this. If somebody was to write a check and turn that into the city for $3,000, could that be directed directly to that line item, if that.
Absolutely. So you would do what did you do for yours? A resolution or a supplemental budget? Resolution?
For the, yeah, resolution.
Resolution where you bring that money in and then I will create well, it's already created. I will allocate it.
Allocate to the line item from the
Correct.
general, okay,
Correct.
cool.
Would that be somebody donating to the city to donate to a group?
Yeah,
Why don't they just do it direct and not involve us?
I think it's because when you look down at the people that, between Homeward Bounds, YCTC, that kind of thing. Those are things that I honestly think it's unfortunate that we're not able to pay for this year, right? And I would help in any way that I possibly can to make sure that we let them know that we are still with them. It's just a tough year. Cause I would like those, first of all, that budget line item to stay open and to be funded in the future. And I would think, and it would be great someday if we could actually add to that list.
Keep it open. There's
Yeah.
no reason to close the line.
Yeah.
So.
Are we still on page 20?
21.
Oh, can I go back to 20 for a minute?
Sure,
Item 22, website maintenance IT,
yes.
which went from 14,000 to nothing.
So website maintenance IT is being transferred into the Acer account, the admin reserve fund. Anything that the admin reserve fund specifically is set up to cover costs of things like subscriptions and maintenance, et cetera, that we need in order for the city to function, the software that we have, et cetera. And so because of that, website and IT is moving to the Acer reserve fund in order to be covered under the same categories that it falls.
Which line 39 and 40 have no amounts on them for the reserve transfer from Acer.
Not for this year, not from the general fund, no.
So where is the line for 22 being moved to?
It's gonna be moved to the admin reserve fund, which is on page 24.
Anything else for this? We can move on to page 22.
Municipal court, let me know if you have any questions there.
Highlighted.
Operations is highlighted simply because that number is based off of current year CenterPoint telling us, but it is quite a bit lower than what has been budgeted in the past. So that, again, is something that I thought maybe you guys might want to change or leave it as is.
So if it was 1766 actual in 24. Does that make sense to leave it at 14?
It fluctuates,
Does it?
yeah. It depends on what Kim has to bring in, like this year she had to buy court paper, which is actually fairly expensive.
Do we have enough to get through next year?
And we have one less officer working.
Yeah.
So there should be some less things coming through.
So. Court costs us $50,000 a year. And we really have no income, right?
Court cost is income.
No, so
Yeah,
if you're
it's real
looking
minimal.
at,
Resources for the general fund. You can see a lot.
so there is municipal court fines, we're looking at $45,000. We're looking at admin court fees at $30,000. We're looking at municipal court assessments at $1,200. So you're looking at roughly $76,000 that will be coming in from court, and that doesn't include the police vehicle reserve numbers. Anybody else? Looks like we're at the police page, Greg.
So Kara somewhat answered a lot of the questions that might be reflected in the general fund police department. The answer maybe just top of the line questions, the reserve transfer for PD vehicle. Whereas normally that's been, last year was 13,000, that's at zero because of a unexpected expense that had to come out. And so that was transferred out at that point. We do need police vehicles, but unfortunately, because of the issues with budget, and it's difficult to be creative, as I have been for the last 13 years, I couldn't be that creative, so that just line item went to a zero. And then as well, the police officer position, that's not in accordance with budget, at least at this point, to be filled. What I'm gonna be working on is, what I've talked about before, is some type of a bond levy, and also the COPS grant will be opening back up, so I'll be applying for that. It's not open for application yet. So I'll be working on that to at least get in the future that position a viable option again. The rest of the line items are things that for materials and supplies are things that what I needed to, just because they're out of my control for the different fees that are charged, like for the policy manual, fees for our CAD services, fees for our user dues for YCOM. So those are things that are a set balance of what they are. So they had to be what they are. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. So since AJ's not here any longer, we
Police
don't,
officer position.
Mhm. And we obviously don't need this many vehicles, especially one that's being leased.
The other vehicles have a lot of wear and tear
I
on them.
understand that. I understand
It's
that.
more to upkeep an old vehicle than it is to pay a lease and have things taken care of with the lease.
Well, I disagree with that, but that's not
Of
what
course you
I'm,
do.
that's not what I'm trying to discuss.
What's your question?
My question is, why not get rid of your vehicle because it's not marked? It'd be easier for another agency to pick up and you take over AJ's vehicle.
Thank you for the option. I appreciate that. It is a marked vehicle, though, just so you understand.
Well, I understand it's a police vehicle, but it doesn't have City of Yam Hill on it. It's an unmarked, when I say unmarked, it doesn't have decals on it.
So Patty, to speak to that, I think one of the issues there is if I understand correctly, that the corporal's police car was scheduled to be replaced, I believe, this year or at some time during the next budgeted year. And unfortunately, so the money that was in the police vehicle reserve was utilized for an unexpected expense, so that money is no longer there. I would imagine, and I'm not Greg, nor do I ever speak for him, but my assumption would be is that moving to a corporal and a chief would remain in his vehicle, and I would assume that our corporal would take over the traffic officer's automobile, and then our charger, which is sort of old and needing to be replaced, would then become our reserve vehicle.
Right. There are options to
Something along
look
those
at,
lines,
but
yeah.
there isn't anything that would create a substantial issue with the deficit to the budget as far as that goes, because there's a rotation of police vehicles, and currently I'm behind on the rotation. So
Well, the only reason that I say that is not necessarily creating a deficit, but it's gonna save money in the long run. And that's, I think as a whole, that's what we should be looking at, is ways that we can save money and not necessarily stay on track the way that it's been. That's why I said that.
right, and I appreciate what is being said as an option, but it isn't anything that would be beneficial, because how the vehicles work is right now, the vehicle that's to be out of rotation in the second vehicle, it costs more money to offline them than it does that you get out of a resale for them.
what was the sale value of the last retired police vehicle that, because it goes through blind bid, I believe.
Yeah.
What was the sale price of that?
I don't recall exactly, less than
Less than 5,000?
less than 2,000 or
Less than
around
2?
2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to decommission them costs about 5,000.
So we lost $3,000 by selling them.
No. In other words, if the process for us to decommission them, to make them legal
To sell, yeah.
to sell, or it would be donated to another agency. So it's not cost effective to sell them. And a newer vehicle, they lose their depreciation value, and it wouldn't be one of the newer vehicles that we would with, because that would really put us behind in a rotation down the road. It would be the oldest vehicle that is to go away, which 2 of them are over close to 200,000 miles. The one we just got rid of and the one that needs to go. So, and the challenge with that, so it is not a vehicle that's being utilized right now. It's parked just because it's sitting there just in case something happens with anything else. But if it were to be a normal working vehicle, then the vehicle maintenance line item would have to be increased drastically for the cost of things.
Which I do know that last year we had a vehicle maintenance overage fairly significantly because of one of the older vehicles that needed a lot of work done to it. Overage to the extent of it was actually more than the vehicle lease on the new vehicle. So.
So and I have no idea who it is that does the maintenance on these vehicles, but, and I have to use I look at my car, for instance. It's got 140,000 miles on it, and the entire time, with the exception of oil changes, I think I spent $2,000 on it.
How many miles do you put on your car?
At this point, not a whole lot, but when I was working, I drove from here to Tigard every day, or from here to Hillsborough every day.
An emergency vehicle is held to a higher standard and a
I
different
understand
standard
that.
too.
I understand that, but the maintenance cost for these vehicles is what?
16,500 proposed.
So it's roughly $16,000 a year, which is averaging $1,300 a month. And I guess what I'm looking at is, are there I take my car to the dealer and they know how it works, if anything's wrong with it. If I hear a noise, I take it in, they look at it, and they don't charge me an arm and a leg to just look at it to see what's wrong with it. So I'm asking the shop or garage or whoever it is that deals with the police cars, is there an alternative that would not cost so much?
No.
That's my question.
No, it creates a liability. You can't put aftermarket parts on something.
I'm not saying put aftermarket, I'm saying is there a business that would charge less?
So-
Than 13 or 16, whatever I said.
Still, the answer is no, and that's why initially when we started this, I said, I appreciate the information, I'll take it under advisement, but I've already looked into that.
So I will tell you that as somebody who sees the invoices and who writes the checks, they do go to the dealership. They have to, part of vehicle maintenance also is things like their tires and their oil changes and their brakes and all that kind of stuff. And those are done way more frequently on emergency vehicles than they are done on personal vehicles. Is there a slightly elevated expense? Yes, because of the parts, et cetera, that have to be used for their vehicles. But I will say that just off the top, it's not outrageous. They are the dealerships. Dodge is where you take the Durango, correct? Is it the one?
There are different places, and that's why it's already been answered. I'll take it under advisement because I've already looked at those things, and where I take them is the cheapest and most efficient place that is trusted.
And then there are things, for example, when somebody is having an issue with the vehicle, they do not charge us to look at it, like you're saying, because I do see the invoices that come in that say, this is what was diagnosed, $0. It's if it has to be fixed. So we do get the same reciprocal agreement / deal with that. So I will say that, I mean, there are things that, like, for example, one of the cars had a radiator go out and that's expensive to fix. So that's where those extra costs come in.
May I throw in here? So we see in our consent agenda every month, these line items for vehicle maintenance and so forth. I wonder if, Patty, we might be able to monitor that closely throughout the course there, because this is something, I mean, obviously we have to have vehicle maintenance because we have
Right,
police
right.
vehicles. But that's something that we can, as a council, be on top of and hold feet to the fire where it needs to be. And then we can ask questions periodically as we go, because I do not think we're gonna solve that tonight.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, is there alternatives so that we can bottom line save some money than just going by off of this? Yes, this is a good thing, but and maybe I'm just misunderstanding this. I'm not hearing anybody suggest any way of reducing these costs rather than just accepting them. And
So
I
Isn't
think
the-
fuel
the-
in that too.
No, the chief has already done that research, because this is his budget. So he's trying,
And-
he wouldn't make a budget that on non-realistic numbers. So this reflects what he is, the research that he's already done and feels is accurate numbers.
And I also, just to make everybody aware, when I started putting a budget together earlier this year, what I did was I went through and I looked at other cities of our similar size for a multitude of reasons to see how they do their budget, what they put in their budget and how much they're spending in their budget. I wanted cities that were comparable, fairly similar to us, for several reasons. First of all, because of payroll. Secondly, I also wanted to see FTEs and how they were being split out between funds, because I wanted to know if we were over or under or somewhere along the same line. And I looked at people's budgets, and honestly, we're pretty low compared to most cities and their police department. So, but they're very expensive to maintain. Very expensive.
Well, the 22-23 was 21,566. And then 23-24 was 16,847. And 24-25 was 16,000. So it's up $500.
Well, and
The
that,
cost of everything is.
that
up too, the
22-23 to 23-24 is when your vehicle came online, correct? So that's
That's why I reduced it.
That's why it was reduced, correct.
Which is
Yeah.
why it would be something that you can't be eliminating newer than vehicle. But I think we've discussed that enough, so you have any questions about anything else?
Are we ready to move on? I believe so.
Page 24, is that right?
Yes, the admin expense reserve fund. So this is the fund we were discussing earlier. If you look down at requirements, those are what we spend the money on out of this fund. So things like the copy machine, the postage machine, software that we have to have annually updated, the support services, the website IT, all of those things are requirements that are coming out of the Acer, the admin expense reserve fund.
So, we have a starting fund this year, beginning balance, which
Yes.
we haven't had a couple of years.
Yes.
How did that happen?
So last year, we transferred more money in than was spent going out. So for example, support services the year before was budgeted at 16,400. We did not spend nearly close to that. If you look at support services over here at 5,000, that is a more accurate number of what we spent this year, this fiscal year. So that 16,400 has come down significantly, and it straight across the board with that, that's where you'll get a beginning balance over at the top.
And water billing software?
That was a one-time transition.
That's the
So,
question.
yeah, one-time transition. We changed from muni billing to Amston last year. So that changes over in Dunwith and that
And
was a
there's
one.
free support service with them.
Mhm.
Okay.
Police Vehicle Reserve Fund. Same story over here. We're not doing any transfers out or transfers in with this fund this year. Any questions with this one?
But we are gonna transfer out to the general fund.
We are gonna transfer out to the general fund. And that will be transferred back in. City Hall Reserve Fund, not much going on there. That fund unfortunately was depleted quite a few years ago.
We're gonna have to have a bake sale or something before this building falls down.
Yeah, right. Planning Department, a couple notable changes in the Planning Department, just to make you guys aware. The reason why the city planner has doubled in price is we lost our city planner this year to retirement. So we have a new city planner, and unfortunately, he is double the money. It was shopped around by Shelley, and this was one of the cheapest options. He is through COG. But that is where it's gonna be.
Question
Contract,
for you on that.
yes,
The city planner's contract is a flat rate, I believe. Is that true? Or are we paying hourly on that as well?
we are paying hourly, I believe. With Walt, it was also hourly, but it was significantly less.
But there was no contract. So that number's reflecting similar to the hours that Walt worked for the city, but at the new rate?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the one good things that I had heard at speaking to him at COG and then I think it was here. Because he's with, it's COG that he's with, is that right?
The new planner?
Mhm.
Yes.
That we have access to support through them as part of that.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
That is my understanding.
Do you think, because is that contract in the purview of the budget committee or is that contract would be for council to review?
I cannot answer that question and I can also tell you that it
That's what I
is,
thought.
That would be council.
Yeah.
I can also tell you that that is, probably in Shelley's computer, is my guess.
That she did a contract with COG?
Yeah.
It might be on, say, under contract.
So we can look for that.
Okay.
But we show the planner doubling from 12 to 24. but
Correct.
We show contract services dropping from 57 to 10.
So
overall,
contract-
Less.
Well, contract services last year, we received a grant from the DLC. So that 57, if you look, the 2 years previously, we had grants. If you go back to the third year, you're looking at around $10,000. So these two numbers included grant money that we received. And those grants have been used. The DLC grant that is current this year is actually still being reported, but that money will be spent.
Is it contract services what we will be reaching out to with a no city administrator? When we reach out to Ross, like you were talking about?
It depends on, yes, so it depends on what fund you're looking at and it depends on.
What topic? and what
Correct,
fund? Okay.
correct. So yes, Ross he goes under contract services.
But not under the contract services for the planning.
No, planning
Yeah.
department,
No.
okay.
Yes. Economic development. Paula, Kim did just go find me the resolution for the economic development fund, so I'll read through that and see
Okay.
how it reads.
Okay, cool. It didn't list a family.
What's the Mitchell family?
No,
Yeah, that's who we originally created. it.
originated
Created.
it for.
Right, but
Yes.
no, they were the first ones to borrow, but they have no say over how that fund gets used.
It was from the urban development.
Well, then why did we get in such trouble with
Was that maybe the, gas station, the bridge and all that money?
No, things, we were
Yeah,
gonna try and
sounds-
put it into,
Use it for sidewalk, we got told no. We're gonna try to use it to improve downtown, we got told no.
yeah,
It can only be used, loaned out to businesses that are moving into town for economic development, just like they did with the flying.
right.
Well, that, but so,
But there was some reason we could not move it into the general fund.
and I'll do more research on it, but I do know that there were loans taken out by the
Right.
downtown businesses
Yep.
for sidewalks.
And that's fine.
So
Yeah,
no
that's
one's
great.
pulled a loan in a long time, so we get
Right.
interest from, help me out
The
here.
LGIP,
I'm not
So-
against doing it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
There's
let's,
just a lot
let's just
of
cross our Ts and
money
dot our
that's-
Is when.
interest has grown.
We have notes to look into.
And who took a look at the resolution and said that it would be, like, when you said you consulted legal, was that?
I did not consult legal. I did not consult legal. I was told it was okay. Shelley consulted legal.
The city administrator did, okay.
Is Ross on that you could ask him?
Ross, what's your opinion?
Hi, I went back and in the budget document in one of the back pages, it describes how the Economic Development Fund was created. And it's certainly, if we use this money, it would have to be a loan from the Economic Development Fund to the city, which I think is a pretty good economic purpose, to keep the city solvent. So that's where I'm at. If this, I haven't read the beginning resolution for this, so I'm not certain what the beginning resolution says. I think it's back in 1984 or something like that. This was set up, so that was quite a while ago. I guess I'd like the time to look at that resolution, and if this is not legal, like it said, I'd like to talk to the lawyers about that and see what has to be done. But I think a loan would be appropriate with a set payback period and interest rate to do this. I don't see why it wouldn't.
Thanks, Ross.
You bet.
I'll scan this tomorrow and send it to you.
And on page
Okay.
30, referencing, it says it can only be given out twice a year, once in December and once again in May. So if the stuff says May,
That's for them people taking a loan.
well, are we considered a group taking a loan from ourselves from the thing?
It'd be like an interfund
Okay,
loan.
then maybe not.
And it has to be opened up. They have to announce it. Too.
Building, program.
Real quick, before we move on, so the transfer out is 116,348 of the 153,911.
Correct.
So we will still have money in there that, so a person could still take a loan on that as,
We've kept the $20,000 under materials and services. You'll see the economic development loans, the $20,000 that we appropriate
Mhm.
annually for those loans still sits there, so that is still eligible to be used.
okay.
Building program. Any questions? All right. Jason, you wanna go or you want me to keep going? Okay.
Before we leave the general,
Yes,
so we have no numbers for any of the wages for anybody.
they're rolled up.
They're rolled up all into one.
it's on page 64.
Okay.
They're in the appendix.
So they're all rolled up into one.
Gotcha.
So there's the total wages, there's the total
Right, that's right,
benefits.
you said that.
and then the
Just
total-
used to seeing the numbers.
Yeah.
and
And then
It catches me too every single time I look, I'm like, oh, No, that's all missing.
So the other thing I would like to have added into the budget is a line item for payback of each of the funds that we're borrowing from so that it doesn't get lost. We have money that just kind of
Yeah,
moved around and gets lost, and we need to have
I would agree with that 100%.
I
a line
think
item
that that's
for
a
each
great
of those
idea.
funds
I thought
showing a
that,
payback.
yeah, I thought that's what
Even
we
if
had
we
to
do
do.
0 this year,
Yeah,
but we have to have a 4 or 5 year
Yeah,
payback.
yeah, you have to have, I mean, that's a council thing.
yeah, but I would like us, while we're going through this budget and thinking to approve it, at 4 to 5 years, I think is generous. I think when you're starting to borrow money, I think that you need to try to get that back faster than that, if, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Even if we schedule it for a 5-year payback, we should be thinking about how do we get that done next year or the year after that, if possible.
Absolutely.
Well, we've got other things to consider that we're giving up right now. like
Right.
I agree.
Police vehicle reserve fund that, we may have to do something next year, or the year after, or some of these other things that we're not adding money to, so 3-year, that's council to decide what, but
Sure.
I wouldn't try to get too aggressive with it, something you can't make. Because if we're gonna come out with a very low contingency, for example, if we can't borrow the 116 from the economic development.
Oh, yeah.
Or, or we don't get the $90,000 grant and we can't move that 40.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I think that you build contingencies first, but I mean, when you're borrowing money from somebody, even if it's another fund, it should be top of mind to get that handled.
Just for me, for like an educational purpose, like who sets the interest rate? On the payback,
On interfund transfers,
how does that say?
council
This
list.
council just set
Yeah.
the number, okay, I was just.
Kim printed me off a copy of the one from when you were mayor. And I don't remember what the interest rate was, but it's on there.
Yeah, I don't remember either. It was, I mean, it's fairly low.
Yeah,
We're
it
not
was
trying
low.
to- Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing
General-
is that what we have to understand here is,
Trying to
oh, go ahead.
speak about interest.
Generally, you would set the interest at whatever the LGPI pays because, or lower than that. I wouldn't go over that. LGPI is kind of the bellwether for interest on those interfund loans.
Okay,
Walk through the utilities recap, I'll just kind of pick up from there.
utilities recap on, page 31. This is all public works here. You're gonna see the Public Works Reserve Fund, then the water, sewer, storm, streets, parks. When you're looking at water, sewer, storm, street, and parks, you will also have sub-funds in there. So you're gonna have for example, in the water fund, you'll have the main water fund, you'll have the water depreciation fund, you'll have the water SDC fund. Those are all rolled up into just water. And as we go through, those will be separated out. The Public Works Reserve Fund, we are going to transfer money into this fund this year to replace a vehicle for Public Works. These monies had been spread out previously via the water fund, the sewer fund, and the water depreciation fund. And now what we are doing is we are taking all those that were spread out through all those funds. We're gonna transfer all that money into Public Works so that it's coming out of one place, which is the reserve fund, which is what it's for anyway. So you're gonna see the transfers in from the water department, the sewer department, and the water depreciation fund. That water depreciation fund, that 25,000 has already been sitting there, so we're just it's been sitting there for a couple of years, I believe. We're taking it out and we're gonna put it in Public Works Reserve. And then if you scroll all the way down, you'll see utility truck purchase at $45,000. So he's gonna have a little bit extra in there, a little bit of padding, but we're looking at roughly 45 for a new truck. But if you have to go over, he's comfortable.
Is that 45 gonna cover things like light bars and badging and things like that, all the things you'll need?
Probably not, Jay, to be quite honest with you.
Would it not make more sense to change that around? You said that there's 25 sitting there, that maybe we could move some of that over in order to cover what his needs would be.
It's all being transferred into the Public Works Reserve Fund
Okay.
currently.
So if he
it's
went
just
over, it
not-
would be a,
Yes, it's
It
just
still
not
stays on.
allocated specifically. There's a utility truck purchase under requirements of $45,000. That's less than what we're transferring in from the other funds.
okay,
This was a conversation Jason and I had, and he said, I want to do this much from this fund, this much from this fund, and this much from this fund. So we are we're transferring all that in. And then he'll have a little bit of padding, for the truck that he needs to purchase. Very similar to the police department, they have a truck currently that has been slowly and surely going into the shop more and more and more often, and is becoming unreliable. Is that accurate? I'm not making that up.
Yeah, maybe we get to the Excel.
Okay. All right, water fund. We're gonna start with the water operating fund. You've got the water recap on the front page. This breaks down the 4 different funds under the water fund, or the 4 different departments underneath that encompass the water fund. So you've got the water operating fund, that's the day-to-day. You've got the depreciation, the SDCs, and the water debt service. The water debt service is specifically to pay back the loans that we have taken out for water. And then at the total over on the right, you're gonna see the accumulation of everything. Page 36, your income. Your beginning fund balance plus your user fees. We have added a few things in this year. For example, the water connection fees. We used to do miscellaneous income. We've decided that it is going to be easier and friendlier to break those out. So for example, in the water fund, you're gonna see water connection fees. That is what primarily is the miscellaneous income, but now you're not gonna question what miscellaneous income is. We do have scheduled in that FEMA grant at $3 million. We also have the Business Oregon grant match at $350,000. Business Oregon has said that they will cover 20%? 20% of that FEMA grant, which actually covers our share as well. So we will be out of pocket very, very minimal, if any, on this grant if everything goes according to plan. The Merkley grant has also been processed. We're waiting to hear whether or not we get that, but we're hoping for good news. User fees are reflecting the new homes at Park Meadows, so that should be a fairly accurate number. And then security deposits, they stay roughly the same. I mean, it really is kind of a guessing game because it depends who moves in and who moves out and how they decide to take their deposits back. This is going to be both in water and sewer. Some people choose to put it towards their water bill. Other people want a check written to them. When they have a check written to them, that's where it comes out of security deposits.
The Biz Oregon grant match, you were saying was 20%? That's not the 20% number of that 3 million, so. Because 20% of that 3 million is 630,000.
So just to understand that, so Business Oregon basically gifted us. It wasn't a grant necessarily. They're just gifting us the money to cover loose ends on that project because we're going to be paying out of hand 387,000 to be exact.
So it was going to be up to 20% or $500,000, whichever was.
Right. So
and this is going to be what our match is.
Because FEMA reached back out to us and said they're going to cover 90% of that grant.
Right, so this number is closer to 10%.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, you were saying 20, that's what.
No, and I apologize. Yeah, originally it was, we were gonna be responsible for 20% of that grant. And Business Oregon was gonna cover 500,000 and we were gonna be responsible for almost 3, I think, based off of the numbers. And then FEMA came back and said they'll do 90% of it. We have to cover 10 and Business Oregon said we will do the 10 up to 500,000. So that's what the 10 is.
Was there, on the Merkley grant, by the way, the senator thinks it's hilarious that we call it that. He's super excited that we call it that because that, it, I guess, has its own name. But he thinks it's really neat that we call it the Merkley grant. Is there matching money that needs to be allocated for
There
that
is
grant?
matching money and it is in the water fund underneath expenses.
Okay.
It's the congressional spending.
So
Is it?
on. I don't remember. I think it's actually in SGCs now that I think about it.
Oh, right. I think that is correct.
I think the Merkley match is in SDCs and I want to say it's roughly between $40,000 and $50,000. Expenses here on page 37, again, you're looking at payroll and personal services up front. You are looking at materials and supplies underneath. You will notice that the FEMA contract services and the FEMA travel are right there at the top. Those are the numbers that we have been given that is specifically allocated to those things. If you look at income, you will see the FEMA admin grant at 90,000. So that one is not going to have its own line item in personal services because Jason is already in personnel services. So when he is working for that grant, then his pay will be covered by that grant.
So with page 37, is there any questions?
Reservoir cleaning
Yes.
had 10,320. Now 0.
Yes, because of us doing that last year, we're gonna go on a 2-year.
Oh,
cycle.
beautiful. Okay. Yeah, I figured it was something like that, but I was just curious. Thanks.
Is that the same thing with chemicals? Because chemicals are going down when the price of everything's going up?
Correct. It's just due to operations and how we operate. We're operating with less chemical dosage.
Expecting that it'll be less, okay.
And producing less gallons per year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I just got a quick question on the FTEs and the budget. So if we go to the back, the appendix, and go to the water, everybody under facilities management. 66 and 67. Am I reading this right? So 25, 26, looking at wages of 72,842, 43,534, and 54,19, right?
I'm
And then-
sorry,
So.
I lost you.
Okay, so page 66,
Okay.
the wages, I meant to do this in general, but we left it, so, it said wages are staying the same, but if we look at 24, 25, we have for the facilities manager, 74,297. And for this year, we have 72,842.
So
Utility worker 1 is down, 2 is down, and plant operator is down. So why is it less?
these numbers that I pulled here, these are numbers that were put in last year.
Right.
That stayed exactly the way that they are. These numbers that I have put in here are pulled actually off of payroll, so they're accurate numbers. These numbers, I don't know why they were inflated. I don't know if that was because they were trying to adjust for a cost of living that was higher and or a step increase that did not happen. That could be two reasons in my thinking, but these numbers right here are actually pulled off of, if you look at, for example, let's go to the next page, the wage table. And actually this,
So that's.
I don't know if
the same.
so that's gonna be, that could be also where your discrepancy is because when we adopted the wage table last year,
Mhm.
previous to that, everybody was all over the board. So this sets you in a standard, if you will, and nobody went down. But not everybody went up as much as what their step increase would have been. So when we adopted the wage scale last year, it did change the structure of employee salaries. And not all of us are salaried, wages, I would say. So then if you look at page 69, this actually shows you hourly what an employee is making and then multiplied by 2080, which is how many hours are in a year. And that tells you how much they will make annually if the number highlighted in yellow is if a 2% COLA happens. So anything in yellow tells you if a 2% COLA cost of living happened. However, the other numbers are going to tell you where everybody sits on a personal level. Adjusting to the wage table and putting everybody on the wage table really
Sounds like create a more accurate version.
pulled everything together. Yes.
So are we accounting for any step increases?
We are not accounting for any step increases right now.
But that's something the council could approve.
That is something that the budget committee actually could discuss. So like I said, at this moment in time, so as we go further down this trail, obviously, and there's a couple of things we need to find out, legality wise. So it is my understanding that it is a all or nothing thing with wage, with step increases / COLA increases. You cannot say some people get it and some do not. Now, your step increase is based off of what you do and how you do it and if you've earned it. But I can't go into this budget and say, we're gonna give everybody the opportunity to get a step increase except this person. So
So if you've given one category a raise, you have to give everybody?
you have to make
the
the option available. COLA is straight across the boards. COLA is a percentage straight across the board. Now, there is a possibility to get around this because of the issues in the general fund, which is the reason why, again, we are looking at everybody as a whole. And I don't know, we maybe could ask Ross this question is, Ross, is there a way to line item, an idea of like a bonus in a specific fund for employees?
Yeah, just remember you're budgeting right now and your budget should be what's reasonable and expected. So if you're expecting to give bonuses, it should be budgeted. If you're not expecting, you don't have to budget it. If you get through the year and someone deserves a bonus, then you just got to figure out where the money's coming from. So
Okay.
you can do pretty much anything you want. The cost of living increase is generally across the board. Either everybody deserves it or nobody deserves it. But the step increase is based on merit. You generally get it with satisfactory performance. If you don't have satisfactory performance, then there's ranges of things you can do. But it's what's reasonable and expected, if that helps.
So in I think it was 21, 22, 22, 3, and 24, 5. Maybe it was just the first 2 years of that. And I'll just use the chief as an example. We budgeted everybody 5% across the board. And upon accepting of the budget, the council gave that position a 10% raise 2 of those 3 years, but nobody else got it. I mean, nobody else in any of the departments. So was that, following your example right now,
If I may speak to that for a second. When I came to work there, raises were pretty much passed out, kind of depending on who could get to council and get a request for a raise. And if council liked it, that's the way it was, which is the reason we adopted this whole matrix and the step increase and the cost of living increases so that everybody would be treated kind of uniformly. What was done in the past was not very uniform. So that's my 2 cents from 22, 23, I think, which is the first budget I was involved with.
Okay, so that's the all or nothing is new.
Okay. Can I make a comment in regards to the step increases? Because I work for the state and you don't always get a step increase.
No, you have to earn it.
Yes. And so the all or nothing.
That's for COLA.
That's for COLA.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, but the way I
COLA.
was understanding the way you were talking is that if one person got a step increase, everybody got a step
No,
increase.
no, but what I'm
Okay.
saying is
I just
that
want to make sure that I was
if
not
you're
getting
going to
that.
budget for step increases, I can't say, like, if the 3 of you work for the city, I can't say, I'm gonna budget Kim and Shay for a step increase, but I'm not gonna budget Patty for a step increase. You have to be given the opportunity to earn that. So you can't just not if you're gonna budget it for it, you have to budget for everybody. It doesn't mean that they'll earn it.
Right,
It doesn't mean that they'll
Okay.
get it.
okay, that's what I wanted to make sure that I understood, because I was gonna say, yeah, that's not how it works.
In my recollection of budget, and I don't know if you were on budget at the time, there has never been an instance where people didn't get one, but one person did. I can say that with a fact, and I can say at the time, there was one person on budget that picked on admin and said, we don't get one, but everybody else does.
What did I?
I'm wondering
I'll
if,
tell you, we're not doing anything personal, here. We're trying to discuss how to do this. All I'm saying is, this all or nothing thing was something new to me, because
It is from
in the
what
past,
we used to
the
do.
council,
Sure.
we think this person did a good job, we're gonna give them a raise, and
I think you're probably mixing it up with a public works supervisor, previous one, getting them handed out. Not
well,
you.
and the other thing too is that Greg did get an increase for being the interim city administrator as well.
And
I
also
don't-
just to bring his salary, wasn't it to bring your salary up to where
Comparable.
comparable to other places, so.
Comparable, not even competitive.
but did we do
comparable.
that with all the other department heads? I mean, bring everybody up?
That's what this wage table did last year, is the wage table. Ross did his due diligence on looking around at what rates are and setting a standard for the steps. And then that's where these numbers came into effect. So that was done last year with this wage table. Obviously, not everything, I mean, Washington County can pay a lot more than we can. I mean, that is what it is.
Well, you gotta compare it to like and like.
Exactly. And so that's,
3,000.
that's where that wage table came into effect.
But the answer, Mike, historically, the cost of living has been for all staff across
Yeah,
the
no, I-
board the same. And then there have been differences in merit increases for staff that are based on their performance. So that's what the difference is with that. However, because there were so many different numbers, that is why there's that step increase plan with a minimum, maximum percentage based on performance.
Like,
So
Does that answer that?
Oh, we remember last
budgeting
year.
in, are we budgeting in that step increase?
It is not budgeted at this point in time. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I was asking Ross, is because of where the general fund sits and being conservative on trying not to overspend out of the general fund, and also understanding that because the problems in the general fund don't affect the problems in public works other than the parks. That if we budget in a line item that says we are anticipating giving bonuses to some of our employees this year, you have a bonus line out of the water fund, and then your guys can get a bonus.
Then you would have to.
So that was where my question was going, right? You mentioned that there was no budget increases for anybody other than coal.
There's not even COLA. COLA's not in this
So,
either.
because of the general fund was so tight, I get it, but if we. The public works department also can't get increases,
So that's where
even though they're.
I'm trying to get
Solid.
around that by offering an option, by saying if we offer a bonus option in water and sewer, as opposed to, if I take these numbers, that would be a step increase, and I multiply that by whenever their anniversary would be, and I say we can budget this amount for bonuses for these guys. And that's not done in the general fund, that might be a way around doing the step increase to get around having to increase the general fund budget with the step increase.
I think the easiest way to say that is that I think everybody agrees that Public Works has been doing an amazing job, and we would very much like to be able to give them their COLA and budget for step increase. However, because of the budgetary problems of the general fund, you can't say everybody gets COLA. But we're trying to find a way for those guys to get it.
Could I suggest something? And I'm just gonna
Yeah.
jump there. So with the admin FTEs, couldn't we just increase those by, 0.5% or something of that nature? Where it kind of balances out?
Well, so can we adjust, because we set the wage scale
If we're
Could,
trying to
couldn't we
play-
adjust the wage scale to adjust by a percent of whatever we decide?
I think that'd be a fair way of across the
What
board.
you're saying is
everybody-
if they have half of their FTEs are in water and sewer, the admin fund, that they would get the benefit of a 2% COLA on that 25.
Which is, yeah, so this was something, this actually was a conversation that Shelley and I were having. Was if you, so for example, city hall employees, admin employees are spread out through the general fund, the water fund, the sewer fund. If you say that a step increase / a COLA increase can exist outside of the general fund. And Ross, this might be another question for you. Can we eliminate a fund, getting an increase and if, for example, I'll use myself, I get paid out of water and sewer, can I get an increase in water and sewer or does it have to be straight across the board?
So if I may, kind of a point of order in all of this, you can do anything you want to do. This is a budget and you guys are coming up with budgeted numbers. And I have found over the last 30 years or so in city and municipal work that if you make everybody adhere or everybody gets to work off the same table and you use that table for flexibility, like instead of giving everybody a 2.8 cost of living raise, which is about what it went up year to year, and going through that process, you say, gee, how about a 1% cost of living? And everybody's eligible for a step increase, but it's going to be based on performance. And we might give some people 2 steps, and we might give some people no steps. And I think you're playing a lot of what if games. Either you kind of stick with the budgetary based on the table or not. Once again, it's budgetary. It's not what actually happens. If you've got an employee that saves you $50,000, you ought to recognize them with some of that. If you got an employee, So anyway, those are my kind of comments. You can do anything you want, but budgetarily, it's kind of what's reasonable and expected.
So I said, with that said, we want employer retention. So if we can take out of the water, wastewater and spread that so everybody has the ability at their step increase. And it was just coming out of those funds that are a little bit flush on that end. Is that something? I would recommend that because I see the efforts all the way around and I would hate to see the cost of living. Where it's at, it's leapfrogged what we're bringing as far as salaries across the board. So if we can give that ability for retention, just to offset it with the percentage in the FTEs, I say we do.
And that's, to Jason's point, he and I actually had multiple conversations about this because specifically, I didn't find it fair that Public Works was not going to get what they were due if they had earned it because of how the general fund sat. And I even actually at one point in time tried moving the guys out of parks in general fund so that they would be out of the general fund. And then I found out that apparently I can't do that because of the work that is done in parks, which happens to sit in the general fund. So that being said, I am all for trying to figure out a way to budget a step increase and a COLA. If I just want it to be fair for everybody and it's not a decision that I feel like I should make because I am somebody that is part of it.
So if I could, with that, I've never heard opposition to Public Works being taken care of properly. Would that be something that we can put a pin in, go through the rest of the budget, see where we are with that, and then return to it before we vote to approve a budget to be able to talk about creating a line, moving whatever we do.
Just so I could jump in there, Shane, so I'm clear on that. We also want to support admin there too. So if we can adjust their FTEs within water, wastewater, so on and so forth.
I don't think you want to increase them. I think you want to be able to pay them at a higher rate, the FTEs when they're working in the utilities. You don't want to go from 25 to something because that's not going to get them any more
We'll
money.
pin it, like Shay's saying, and we'll get back to it, but it's just a suggestion on the table so that everybody.
Because that's gonna be detailed money, right? And so we still have 40 pages,
Right.
41 pages of broad strokes.
So,
But so if, I mean, we came back to those details, I think that it has to be addressed. We should address that.
page 37, sorry.
Unless somebody disagree, I mean, we can do it
I
now.
just got one more question. Is there a reason parks has to be in general?
Because the income that is brought in the general fund helps pay for the parks, taxes, et cetera.
That's what I thought immediately too, Mike, was to move it into like a Parks and Recreation Fund.
Which I looked into and I was told no. I tried.
So with that, any questions on page 37? Sorry to jump back.
Yeah, no, good deal.
Where's your vehicle maintenance?
You said 37?
Yeah, page 37.
Because he's expecting to purchase a new vehicle.
Moving forward, page 38.
So just the transfer out to general fund of the 40,000. We'll make a line item in the general under.
There will be the one for, well,
I mean, because we're not even sure we're gonna get that yet.
right. So, I mean, those, yes, that number is definitely, it's sitting in limbo, but I mean, there's $3.5 million sitting in limbo right now that we don't know.
No,
But we have to account for it. So if it doesn't happen, then we make adjustments.
Question for you on, what was it, 2, intake structure?
Yes,
Is that the screen?
that is the screen.
What, so,
So that was gifted money,
It was previously the rock dam.
right?
correct.
So it went down from 100,000 to 76,000 because we got through permitting and design.
I thought that was lower than that. After the design portion of it, when we had the meeting with Christensen. I thought it was more like 60. Is it really, we really have 76, 344 left?
The numbers we looked at, right, Kara?
Yeah, it was the numbers that we looked at, but we can go back and take a second look at that. The other thing is that even though we were gifted 100,000, it doesn't mean that Jason can't add some money into that from his funds.
No, I just want to make very clear on that.
Right. And some of that could have got convoluted,
Mhm.
Shay, just due to the fact that when we did get bids on it, we were at like $98,000. So that's when we pulled out of that.
You personally are comfortable with that though? Being close.
I am actually, I talked to our engineering group today, actually, in regards to that, to make sure that we were still in that range, so.
I just hate to go to a meeting with them and be like, oh, there's 15 grand in there, congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing really quickly to point out is that the tie line feasibility and the plant tie line feasibility at $75,000 each. That is in there in case we do not get the Merkley money, so that is not necessarily money of ours that will be spent, but it will be spent if we do not get the Merkley money. So that's the balance of the scales there. It has to be done. It's whether or not we'll pay for it or whether or not we will get a grant to pay for it.
Anything else there? Page 39.
Bills.
Page 40.
So very quickly, if you don't mind, Jason, I'm
No,
gonna
go
point
ahead.
out that the reason why I have highlighted the FEMA tank in the Olive Street was because initially with the FEMA tank, we didn't know if we were gonna owe out of pocket anything for that. So it was written in there, not knowing whether or not we were gonna owe anything. The Olive Street Camellia, we can use SDCs on that. However, Jason and I spoke. And because what we have in contingency in SDCs is dwindling and we have very little future SDCs coming in because we don't have anywhere else to build. He wants to keep that and he's gonna use complete funding out of the water fund to pay for that project instead of using SDCs and water fund.
Beautiful.
So we can
Thanks,
use
Kara.
the SDC funds for the Merkley Grant
Yes,
match?
yes.
I thought we shouldn't do that. Okay, good.
Page 41. Moving on. Sewer. Any questions to recap? Page 44.
So not on 44, but 45, I'm gonna point out again, instead of sewer miscellaneous income, we're breaking that into sewer connection fees, backflow testing fees, and sewer services. I would like to tell everybody that Kyle has received his certification to do backflow testing for the city, which is absolutely fantastic, which means we can bring revenue in because of that.
Good deal.
So back to like the step
Yes.
increase things, when they get additional certifications, do they get step increases or additional pay?
It was, go ahead, Gary, go. Sounds like yes, I'm saying.
Well, I was gonna say what I've heard, so, because I wasn't here.
So yes, there was
That's significant that he did that. That's
right,
good.
there
We
was
should-
previous language, you know, describing to the fact that there would be incentive pay in regards to certification, but that was just conversation. I don't think we locked anything down within.
I don't think anything was ever written down.
And we don't have a policy manual that covers those things or employee manual that covers those things where there's an expectation of a pay increase or something on those.
So what
Twins.
I've seen, and I haven't researched it thoroughly, but what I've seen is that the city offers to pay for the certification. We offer to pay for the schooling and the testing, et cetera, for them to be certified.
Mhm.
And then, again, I could be wrong, because I think there's Shay and maybe Tim could answer this question. Although you might not have been on council at the time. It is my understanding that 2 years ago, there was a step increase given, or not a step increase, a wage increase given
That was prior to wage tables.
prior to the wage table that was, hey, we're gonna give this to you now, go get your
Just
certification.
making sure, because I haven't seen the policy manual or the employee manual that with the, employees are given. And so if those
you
things are
haven't, I would be
noted.
Happy to send it to you, because we just got it back.
I didn't read
Well, but
anything in there about that.
if it's in there written, then it's an expectation. We need to make sure that we're budgeting it,
Right.
so.
True.
Correct.
And most times we just recap that over in their previous review. We set, obtainable goals for them, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then, just so people know, people would pay a plumber to perform the backflow test. It wasn't a cost to us, so we're getting money we added on their water bill.
The revenue.
The
yeah.
revenue.
yeah.
And that's, I agree with you, because so the certification that goes along with each one of our jobs, actually, that we can, obviously you want to incentivize people to go out and do that, and I mean, we've got the star pupil Jeremy that just went out and did all his FEMA stuff, so it.
I mean, there is, in regards to our plant operator we pay a DRC 7,500, what is it, yearly, annually, fiscally? 1,500 a
It's
month.
going up to 15, it's $1,250 right now, it's going up to $1,500.
In which Kyle, or I should say, operator has received that certification, so now we can take that off the payroll.
That stops this year
Well,
On the wastewater side.
on the wastewater side, we'll still have to pay him
for the water
for the
treatment.
water. side.
Is that something we're working towards?
Yes,
Cool.
we're,
So,
yeah,
Good,
But
good
we're
job.
saving $1,500 a year because this person got that
That's
certification.
$1,500
Okay, a month, then that person needs to be getting at least 500, if not 750, like.
The compensation,
Yes.
correct.
Well, we used to, or maybe I'm wrong, maybe I keep thinking that we used to have certification pay.
Well, yeah, you've got it, right, Greg?
Well, for the officer.
Never have.
No, thought we did.
Why do I remember there being certification pay?
It requires for me, but I've never received
don't
an
know.
incentive for it.
so moving forward, it's something to think about, like Chris was saying, so. Page 45, moving on, page 46. As you can see, not large upticks, we looked at the CPI, I think that was going up like 1.9% each year, but we budgeted within our confines with what we're spending within our project, our operations and maintenance. You will see vehicle maintenance did take an uptick. I mean, that was something that we spent out a lot this last previous fiscal year, so.
So audit fees went up almost double. What's that?
So our auditors, our audit company was absorbed by another audit company this year, which actually is the reason why our audit was done so late, because the contract was not signed early enough. So
Budget audit.
that is budget audit. It is split between the funds. And I was told that not only are this number reflects an additional 20% on top of what we paid this year, because I was told by the auditors that that's what they are expecting, anywhere from 10 to 20% to be added onto what we paid this year. So I budgeted for 20% because let's be safe.
How long is that contract good for, and have we shopped that?
I can't answer that question. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know that they had been absorbed by another company until after the fact.
Okay.
So,
We should still have a way out according to the contract, correct?
I have not seen the contract.
Oh, okay.
So it may be on the computer, it may be on Shelley's computer. So once
Well,
we
we're
find
budgeted
it,
in for that, because that's where we are
it's
right now.
budgeted in for that.
And if we can make an adjustment to that contract or
It would
determine that it's
It
appropriate.
would have to
we
be
can
another
either way.
company, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We've been satisfied with this company that we have.
Well, their work might be great, but I mean,
The fees aren't.
these, yeah.
Page 47 kind of just outlines what they were saying earlier as far as projects this coming year.
I do want to make a notation here that the projects are listed, but also when you look at the transfer out, the very bottom one to SDS, that is the Sewer Debt Services Fund. When we get to the Sewer Debt Services Fund, we're going to go over the fact that, and Jason and I have spoken about this, we would like to try and make a double payment this year on on our sewer loan. We are very close to being done with it. And the sewer loan is roughly $35,000, but we pay roughly $10,000 in interest on a $35,000 annual payment. So if we can double that payment and without having to double the interest and pay it off faster, we would love to try and do that. However, there are apparently steps that we have to go through with council in order to have that authorized. However, I have written that into the budget that if you guys all approve that we do that, then we do it.
Good. Well, I think council would like to ask staff to have that ready by the next meeting.
So where did that get paid from previous to?
So it's always come out of sewer and into sewer debt. But when you look at sewer debt, in previous years, the requirement, if you look at sewer debt service principal at $30,000, it's the last page. Look at the previous year, $30,000.
Right.
And so the payment actually, if you look over on the right, $9,991 is actually what we paid this year on interest. And then if you take the $7,160 and divide that in half, which is roughly $35,000, that's what the payment was. So if we can double the payment and only pay the interest once, then we will have that paid off faster and with less interest. But there are, I spoke with Ross about this, and there are requirements that council has to go through in order to be able to do this.
Do it.
What's the balance on the thing?
This looks like a new line item. I'm just curious as to where the old line items are for paying this.
So previously, the way that the payments were split monthly is if you look on the sewer debt service up at the top, it says sewer user fees, and this year it's empty. So previously, what we have done is we have split every payment that comes into the office 80-20. 80% went to the sewer, 20% went to the debt service. This year, what we are going to do is as soon as we hit that debt service mark, we're just gonna
Make one payment.
yes, one transfer, instead of splitting each payment that comes into house 80-20.
Correct.
We're just gonna transfer it over into debt service.
Makes more sense.
Jesus.
Any questions on page 47? Transfer out, we're good. Page 48,
I guess I do have a question. Since we're looking at ways to kind of save money and possibly give people actual raises or cost of living. The sewer fund has a huge beginning fund balance,
Yes.
so that obviously you can take care of. So this is, I guess my question is, these types of numbers is what you're looking at, the reason for giving people that kind of the bonus thing and stuff, because it's, you've got these kind of funds.
correct.
So, yes, the water
Correct.
fund and the sewer fund are sitting really nicely this year. Last year, actually, the water fund was fairly low. We had a contingency issue in water last year. But we do not have that issue this year. Part of it has to do with the new homes that have come in, and part of it has to do with less projects that were done last year. So the water fund and the sewer fund right now, and the sewer fund specifically is sitting really nice because we only did one sewer project last year. And we make interest off of everything that's sitting in the LGIP, so that interest based off of how much money is in there gets higher and higher and higher if that money just sits.
Right.
So he's increasing interest on these accounts as well. And then he has 3 sewer projects that he wants to do this year. So when you look at the sewer fund there, his contingency left after the 3 projects is $138,479. That would be the money that would be able to be played with in terms of bonuses.
Okay.
And just to add to that, Paula, as we've gotten more aggressive with that CIP, we realize how much admin plays a role in that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
As far as how that kind of that monetary push to get everything out there, it's a lot of working parts. So hopefully that answers that question, page 47. Yeah, moving on, page 48. As you can see, Ellie's Garden Lift Station been subtracted from here because we're gonna be doing that CIP project, which is listed on page 47. At 100,000. The PLC, MCC panels, those are just upgrades to our telemetry, which is just simple communication back and forth from wastewater to our main wastewater treatment plant. So, any questions? Moving on. Okay, page 49.
Real quick, so what was the reason to move Ellie's from the system reserve into the working fund?
To make that a clean transition for the CIP project, just for tracking purposes. Page 49.
So SDC fund, so if we don't have any more houses going in, we're not gonna appropriate any more SDC funds.
No.
Or maybe very few.
Correct.
So what can we use these for, and why do we, I keep hearing we want to keep that fund up and move as little out of it as we
You
can.
want it? Well, sorry, Gary. I mean, if we're just strictly talking SDC funds, it's pre-managed in the sense that our engineering firm says to us, hey, use 20% per project. That way you have a kind of a guideline to kind of like navigate you long-term, because you don't want to use, 30, 40, 50% of those SDCs on one project. So we're kind of microing those SDC funds, if that's what you're asking. We don't, like if say the disinfection room, I mean, we could have used and pushed for more SDC funds, but that's only gonna take away from us on Ellie's Garden or another project as far as this.
Basically a balancing act between.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
fund
I mean,
and
it's,
SDC.
yeah,
We have
the
it-
20%'s a pretty.
We have it in working fund, use that up first to save SDCs for an emergency or whatever.
I mean, it's half a dozen of one and
Right.
6 of the other, depending on how you want to spend it. Just knowing that without the urban growth boundary expanding, we will have very little to no SDCs coming
Right,
in
good
the
point,
future.
good point.
But Mike, weren't you asking originally of what that SDCs can be used for besides just the 20%?
Capital improvement projects, and it's specifically for capital improvement that is to existing
Structure.
structures. So it's money that's reserved specifically, like, so for example, the Third Street project that they just did where they replaced the water line already existed, but it needed to be upgraded and it needed to be fixed. So we were able to do a 80-20 split on that. 80% came out of the water fund, 20% came out of SDCs because it was rehabbing an existing structure. It's not for new build, it's not for brand new, whatever, we need to fix something that already exists. So there's system development charges.
You're upgrading your infrastructure, so if
Yeah.
you have a 6-inch diameter pipe, we have to state, it's regulated by the state that we have to go to an 8-inch if we're gonna use those funds, so.
Will that be utilized, should the new water tank be put in?
Well, the way it's looking at the way it's trending, what we're seeing from FEMA and the percentages, it'd be a small percent if we have to reach into it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty low number right now, 387 for a $2.7 million project, so.
Yeah,
I mean, if you can hold on to them, hold on to them,
Yeah.
so.
sure, yeah.
All right, page 51, I guess we're stepping into. Here. Sidewalks.
Going back to sewer debt service really quick, that
Yeah.
you're gonna see that transfer in of 81,595 that if we get everything, all our ducks in a row, then we'll do that double payment with, no, what do you call it? We don't get penalized for making a double payment.
Anywhere on here, does it say what the actual principal balance is of the debt? I don't see that.
So it's not listed in the fund because all of our debt services, all of our loans are amortized, I can't say that word.
Amortized, yeah.
Yes, okay. Over,
The life expectancy. of the-
right, exactly, the 30 years or 50 years or whatever it is. So in the back, when we go to our table of contents, there actually is on page 71, you'll see based off of the years and which loan it is, how much we're paying into down to pay that loan down.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest we kind of take a 10-minute break. We've been at this for 2 hours.
I love it.
Take a 10-minute break.
Second.
There we go.
And here's the thing, we're almost done, so
Yeah.
if we get through this tonight, that'll be great.
Almost, yeah.
Act 5, taken away. Street fund,
Where were we at, 51?
yeah.
51.
Any questions on the recap sheet?
Page 52.
Question on that, Recology franchise fees,
Yes.
why from 49 to 54?
Because the population, as the
Okay.
we get a percentage of what they pick up. So as the population grows and as they have more people that they are, picking up from in Yamhill, we get a percentage of that.
Okay, I was thinking that was it, but I just wanted to check.
Well, the actual for 23-24 was,
Yeah, 54, that's what I was curious about, yeah.
yeah, and then for some reason it was, last year it went down and now it's back up, so.
Didn't they do a presentation where they were changing some of those fees?
So those were for the actual, so the presentation they do is for actually what the human that lives at the house pays. So they have to announce to council if they're going to raise the rates, which they do every single year.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think they raised them up.
I pointed that out last year that they've come hand in hand 3 years in a row and that should remember that for the following year.
It's, they've never not raised the rates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they raised them $1.50, I think.
So is there a reason that they're not lumped in with the rest of the franchise fees from all of the companies?
Yes.
Oh, never mind. Sorry.
So the Recology franchise fees specifically get deposited into the street fund because they are on our streets on a consistent basis. And so when we take the revenue in from them, which is the agreement that we use Recology in the city of Yamhill, we use that money that they pay us to help fund the streets that they drive on.
Just curious.
Now, you said the street fund was the sidewalk fund, correct?
So we used to have, well, I shouldn't say we used to. It is being proposed that the sidewalk fund be absorbed into the street fund. Which again is a budget committee decision to make. Primarily because there's not a lot that goes on in the sidewalk fund. And so for my personal preference, and Jason's as well, is that if we just combine these two because they're basically similar in nature in what they do, then it's gonna make our lives easier.
Is that way the interest is?
So the interest, so beginning balance and interest both is going to reflect the combination of those two funds combining together.
So you don't actually have a page for the sidewalk fund yet?
There is a page for the sidewalk fund, but it does not have numbers on it. So 55 is the sidewalk fund, but there's no numbers because those numbers are now in the street fund.
So you know that if you have a line item in a budget, it has to remain for a period of years afterwards,
Yeah.
even if that fund no longer exists.
We have to keep it for at least 3 years.
3 years.
Does merging those two funds affect any future grants?
Good question.
Like, I know ODOT, they did a bunch of grant work with sidewalks in Carlton. We have Main Street, it could use a lot of sidewalk repair or something. So if that was wanting to be a grant in the future, would that be something where those funds need to be separate?
Ross?
It would not impact the grant. The grant might specify that you have to rebuild the sidewalk fund, but generally they don't care how you account for the money these days.
So if you had to rebuild the sidewalk fund, could you transfer money out of the sidewalk street fund to go, you could, okay.
Yeah, you can go back and you can basically, yes, go backwards with it.
So, Jason, what have you used this fund for? I mean, have we,
The sidewalk fund?
I mean,
you use it a lot?
are you talking about the sidewalk fund or the
Yeah,
street fund?
sidewalk.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot more aggressive the last couple of years with doing sidewalk repair. I mean, you can look out there on Highway 240, off 240 there, you know, that's a new approach, sidewalk, Highway 47. There's probably,
Okay, But
600
is it
linear feet of
normally the
sidewalk.
property owner responsible?
it is,
for
but
the
it's pretty
sidewalk?
convoluted in our policy. I mean, I find it hard, and it's something we've discussed before, that if that house changes hands over time and the sidewalk was never repaired when it was desolate, it's hard for me, and this is just, it's hard for me to approach the new homeowner and say, now you have to repair the sidewalk, even though we didn't put that on the last home.
The previous one.
Right, but you set a precedent by doing that, and then nobody's gonna fix it and expect the city to do all of it.
It's hard. I mean, I'm being quite honest with you. It's, we meaning all of us have kind of rolled into a situation where it wasn't done in that nature. So now and the home has changed hands, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, whatever.
One right up here, the sidewalk needs to be done on both sides, but
That to me is more of a council decision. I mean, I just look at it, 20,000 a year gets us, maybe a square block at the most. I mean, it's just what I've seen us run into is it's hard for the elderly, the handicapped, things of that nature even the disabled to even approach some of our sidewalks. We pushed all of that foot traffic out into our roads. So if we can do something, just to kind of manifest and give
becomes a safety issue.
it becomes a safety issue, and it's just kind of the nature of it's like the good nature of the city. But there again, that's just my mindset. Do we want to go out there and put door hangers on everybody and tell them it's time for you to repair your sidewalk, or do we want to set the precedent and then kind of step away from it and say, hey, we did do our due diligence for the last few years? I don't know. It's a tough one.
Do we, put
Honestly.
liens on property?
Yes, we used to, and do you remember when Terry Bednarzik was here?
Yeah.
So there are liens out there, and they are still active because somebody called and said, hey, I put my sidewalk in, you can take my lien away, and I said, huh? Cause
Yeah.
and I looked into it, and it was like, okay, now what do I need to do to remove the lien from the property? So there are still, from that long ago, liens on the property.
I think Mike's right, that council needs to take that up.
Right.
We need to see if they still are on the property too.
Sure.
Well, I mean, going forward.
But yeah, I'm talking about
We
the
fix
whole
somebody's
overview of this
sidewalk.
issue.
We should at least put a lien on it for 80% or some amount of money so that we can redo this fund and fix others. Otherwise. the
Well, I
fund will be
understand,
gone.
you know,
This has always been an issue. I mean,
Yeah.
from the 80s on, it's been an issue. We did a study, this council did nothing with the study, and all of a sudden, according to our lawyer, we're now on the hook. If we don't get those fixes, somebody hurts themselves. They can sue the city, and the city's now.
It's actually this homeowner's responsibility.
We were told by the lawyer at the time, if the city's aware of it and does not do anything for it, they can also be sued. So,
Well, I guess with that said, I mean, that gives us within this fund a little bit of leeway to do our due diligence.
no,
If we
it's
know,
not about
but-
moving it, it's about,
There again, to Shay's point, I think that's something the council should talk to.
I mean, are you just gonna say it's okay for us to spend $20,000 fixing, our constituent sidewalks, and we're not gonna worry about any recompense, and in
Oh, that's not what
100
I'm
years,
saying
we
there
might
at
have them
all.
all done, or?
It's.
No, I'm saying $20,000 for, so the sidewalk, for example, that they put in from Third Street to Jane Heinrich Park this year was a brand new sidewalk that never existed before. I would say that this is my personal opinion, that's what that money should be utilized for, is new and better, and over by Beulah Park, I think is a great place for a sidewalk right there. But then I agree with you completely that if Bob's sidewalk's in disrepair and Bob sells his house, that should be something to disclose to the new buyer, and then we get a new sidewalk put in,
Well, it should be, because
or whatever that looks like.
No,
Or if you have a derelict sidewalk, maybe it needs to be repaired right now.
I think Shay brings up a good point. I think it should be used and utilized for safe passage. You know what I mean? It's, like
But
Highway
to
47.
Mike's point, not because, I'm sorry, I'm picking on you, Bob, but not because Bob just doesn't want to fix his sidewalk and then the city ends up throwing 20 grand to help Bob out, but somebody else's
Absolutely.
sidewalks, yeah.
I think most places, if you're a homeowner and your sidewalk in front of your house is in disrepair, you get a notice from
Yeah.
the city and they say, fix your sidewalk.
Well, and to that point, the economic development loan that sits in there, the $20,000 that's
one of the reasons for it.
a lot of people use that at one point in time for that specific purpose.
I actually think it could take.
Speaking
They
of,
took the loans out against, because the interest rate was so much lower, out of the economic development loan to fix the sidewalk and then paid it back at a lesser rate.
so speaking of sidewalk funding, I noticed that, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but not. On page 52, which is where we're at, I don't see anything about sidewalk deposits. Whereas, page 55, there is a item, line item number 2 under 54-9, 494 for sidewalks deposit, but there's no item in page 52 for that.
So sidewalk deposits are paid on homes that are being built that are not new developments. So for example, there have been a handful of homes, not a lot, but a handful of homes on lots in the city that were not new development, new build. So we would take a sidewalk deposit because you have to put a sidewalk in. We would take a sidewalk deposit, and once the sidewalk was put in, we would pay that back. The reality of it is that we haven't had any builds recently that have needed sidewalk deposits, so that has just been sitting there. It wasn't budgeted last year either.
Shouldn't that line item appear though?
Not if they're just gonna combine it into the fund and just.
If there's no money coming into it, and there's no money going out of it currently, in the year and a half, a little over a year and a half that I've been here, I've seen one sidewalk deposit come in.
Yeah, the last one was in 23-24, yeah.
So it's just not, we don't have builds coming in. So the new developments are putting their own sidewalks in. We don't have builds outside of that where we're holding a deposit for people to put a sidewalk in.
So the new house across from the fire department, did we get a deposit for that? Or did you put it in?
And it's two lots, I think, too.
It is.
So.
It is 2 lots, and I want to say actually that it's not a sidewalk deposit. I think it came in on SDCs, didn't it?
No, they're different.
No, I know that
Paid when they pay their estimate.
the sidewalk deposit,
I know the gas service station had one. I don't know off the top of my head saying for sure about those other changes, but normally it's collected.
well, we haven't had sidewalk deposits come in coded on income. The last one, or the only one that I've ever seen was the Paynes. When the Paynes built that house across from the park, they paid a sidewalk deposit, and then I wrote a refund check back to them after they put their sidewalk in.
Is that the old Fido place?
And there's 2 more houses next to that would have been after that should have had one then too.
Well, is it a problem to just take that line item and just add it to the street fund on page 52?
Not a problem at all. You can do that easily.
Something.
Yeah.
Pains is.
Yeah.
Perspective.
Well, so
Just to have it, just so that, you know, let's say I get weird and decide I'm gonna tear down my house, and build a new one.
no,
and I'd
don't
have
get
to-
weird.
I already am.
Do it, yeah.
So here's the thing, it's tracking money in and money out. So we can absolutely add it in and we can put a number in there.
Yeah.
It's a wash, unless somebody doesn't physically put their sidewalk in, it's a wash.
Yeah.
Because it's in and out. Now, if somebody doesn't put their sidewalk in, then we get to keep that money.
Yeah.
But
But do we have to use that money to build them a sidewalk?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much are we charging them? And is it enough to build a sidewalk if they don't do it?
Yeah, or we in the hole.
I don't know how much it is it's set at $15 per.
Can we look at whatever that verbiage is in that contract that you would sign for that to make sure that it says if your deposit's $5,000 or $500 or whatever it is, but the estimate to put in your sidewalk is $20,000. And if you choose not to do it in so many months, what have you, then the city will put a lien on your house for the rest of it and install the sidewalk for you.
so here's this thing for
Something
context,
I don't
the
know.
sidewalk deposits that were budgeted in 22 and 23 and 23, 24 I believe that the first one is one sidewalk deposit and the second one is two sidewalk deposits. So you're looking at doing one or two, maybe a year. We can put it in
It's gotta go somewhere.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
can
it's
put
just,
it
it's
in
just cleaner to
as
have
a
it.
budgeted item for sure to have it come in and come out.
That would be my
Um,
They
recommendation.
went up $22 a cubic,
And it's set at 15
so it's
per
something we'll have to
linear.
adjust. It's definitely low.
Yeah, but if council wants to increase that, the sidewalk fee, then that's.
Yeah,
They can certainly do that.
152?
Yep. It's 54
Let's see here.
494.
Page 54.
If 52 is getting a line in, then 53 needs to get a line out.
yes. And we'll put that under capital outlay.
Oh.
Page 54. $55.
Something.
Yep, that's the one. All right. Stormwater.
Now we're on 57.
57, stormwater recap.
So the stormwater SCC fund was established, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. Does that sound about right?
That does.
To build up, to start develop a stormwater operations system within the city of Yamhill. Last year, we added the actual stormwater operations. So from, I think 22, 23, 24, we collected the $2 stormwater fees on people's utility bills and they sat in the sewer fund, but they were line itemed as stormwater fees. And so we are going to officially, for those 2 years that wasn't, it was not transferred last year because the fund was just developed last year, was just added last year. Officially this year, we're gonna take those monies that sit in the sewer fund and we're gonna transfer them into the actual stormwater fund, which now gives us a base in the stormwater fund, and that's where those fees will continue to be collected.
Page 58.
We don't have any expenditures really expected for the stormwater, is that?
Not at this point in time, so we'll have to build these funds up a little bit. and-
Before projects start, right?
Before we can start with projects on them. The SDCs were added in, like I said, 3 or 4 years ago, and that fund began. That's the reason why that one's a little healthier. The actual stormwater fund, because it's only $2 from every water bill. If you look and you see stormwater fees coming in this year at roughly $12,000. The 23 is gonna be the transfer in from those first 2 years of taking those fees that have sat in the sewer fund. Jason does have a sewer project this year for South Cedar Street that eventually will go hand in hand with stormwater projects. So he's gonna start that, and that's gonna start on the sewer side of things, and then when we have a little bit more money in the stormwater funds, then we'll finish those on the stormwater
So
side.
yeah, that project encompasses full. Page 59. Park funds.
So when you're looking at the park fund recaps, I do want to point out very quickly that the grayed area is what you're seeing that exists within the general fund. The white areas are outside of the general fund. So park SDCs and park reserves sit outside of the general fund. However, parks themselves sit inside the general fund. It's a little confusing, but that's how it's set up.
There was an option here, Karen and I spoke to this, transferring in 53,000 from one of the funds. I think we specifically pointed to the wastewater fund to make those SDCs obtainable for a project. Because right now we're kind of landlocked with those SDCs and you can see how heavy they are.
we are very SDC heavy in the Parks Department, and we definitely need a project, and we definitely need money in the Parks Fund to match it. So when you're looking at the payout and you're looking at an 80-20 split, 80% being paid out of the fund and then 20 being paid out of SDCs. Obviously, we have a lot of SDCs and not a lot of park funds, which is the reason why we're talking about the possibility of adding that $2 park fee to everybody's utility bill to try and raise that a little bit. Any other year, I would tell Jason, absolutely, let's transfer $53,000 out of sewer or wastewater into the Parks Department. But because of where the general fund is sitting this year, I do not want his $53,000 transfer to get absorbed into the general fund in other departments. So I feel it's best that we sit on that for a minute until we're positive in the general fund, and so he doesn't lose it.
And to add to that, like council knows, I mean, going through the new master plan with AKS is something that we need to establish, so I think.
So we have that, and then we've also, I've had meetings with Chehalem Valley Parks and Recreation in regards to assistance in grant writing. So whatever you want, let us know and we'll help you get it. Because I've explained our situation with the STCs, he goes, that's a great place to be, I'll show you now.
And that is the nice thing, is that there are a ton of park grants
Yep,
out
that's
there
what
if
it
you
said,
have
yeah.
somebody to write for.
The page 62, excuse me, any questions in regards to that? As you can tell, numbers really didn't change very much in operations.
Jason was wanting to try and budget this year to take out 2 trees in the park. Last year we budgeted for 1 and ended up having to take out 2 trees. So actually that number for 24-25 that sits at $4,500 is actually over $7,000. However, because again of how the general fund is sitting, it behooves us to wait on that. The 2 that got taken out this year, when he took out 1, the other one had to come out. It wasn't that we under budgeted, it was circumstance on how that ended up working out. So there are a handful of trees at Beulah that definitely need, I think you said over 5 years that need to come out. So we'll just go slow and steady.
Can you use
5
STP for that?
years or over a
No,
period
over
of
the
5
next
years?
The next 5,
Oh,
yeah, no, the next 5.
okay.
Can you use STC for that?
No.
Safety issue?
No. Cannot. All right, page 63.
Park Reserve.
Good interest income.
Use it though.
Nope. Well, you can use that, but that's all you got.
We have made it through. So as we keep going, just to make sure that you guys are aware, the appendix has all your extras, your wage tables, your wage scale, your transfers in and out, your debt depreciation or debt funds, your property tax worksheet, and then there's a glossary in the back to help you with any verbiage that needs to be cleared up.
Okay, seeing how we're at the end of the budget, do we want to circle back and have a discussion on the step increases, the COLA? What's the general feeling of this committee as far as what do we do with those? I personally just don't like, I don't think that it's a good precedence to set. I went to tell people that, well, I'm sorry, but we're just not gonna do a COLA this year. That just doesn't sit well with me. I don't like it. The step increases, I don't know. But let's just kind of go around and see what where people's blood pressure is and what solutions people want to look at.
One thing I didn't see in this whole packet was the schedule of bonds payable. Schedule of bonds paid. It was in last year's budget. It's not in this budget at all.
We don't have any bonds.
Yeah,
We have debt service, we have loans that we've taken out.
So your OECDD and your OBDD is all paid off or done with?
No,
And your US Bank?
that's
National
the
Bank?
debt service.
Our loans.
Those are the loans that we're paying on.
Okay.
So,
It's listed in the previous budget as schedule of bonds payable.
I think it's just different wording probably.
I couldn't find the figures anywhere.
Would you mind sharing that with Kara?
Sure.
yeah, I don't know, does it list the, well, it does kind of list the, on page 75.
Yeah, it's where I'm at.
It just lists them in a different format.
yeah, these are the same loans. They're just listed differently.
Yeah,
So I did not have this sheet on my stuff. However, so this is so there's 2 water loans out and there's 1 sewer loan out. The sewer loan, if I remember correctly, is the one that was refinanced in 2018. I believe the origination of that loan is from the 80s, I think. One of them is from the 80s. I'd have to pull the loan documents. 1988? 98. Okay, so 98. Yes, these are the 3, it says bonds, but these are the 3 loans that we have out.
okay.
They're just written within here. You'll see the numbers and everything.
Oh, they're just written out, okay,
Yeah, that's page 75.
yeah.
Can we circle back to the wages? I'm in agreement with Paula, like, I realize there's, maybe certain benefits to a government job. I had one at one time, but this isn't even remotely competitive, and I firmly believe that all of our staff is being paid way less than they should be. We need to fix that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to start from the beginning with a whole new staff.
No, it's cheaper to keep the ones you have than it is to
Absolutely.
retrain.
And I personally just see a way, at least an avenue with the water and wastewater fund to support the step increase for not only public works staff, but the supporting staff and admin. If we can just adjust the FTEs enough to give them the opportunity to get that step increase, plus their 2%. I mean, not to get into the semantics of it, but just the cost of living alone is just, I have an individual right now that's making, bear with me here, almost $21.
Which is like minimum wage now.
And I don't want to, sit here and just play pity party, but most of my staff has 2 jobs and you know what I mean? Just to make it, just to get through. So
Right.
they're doing exceptional. Admins, a huge bonus to what we do. So if we can kind of finagle as FTEs, or you guys can find a way to do that, because I believe all staff, and I agree with Paula. Yeah, I think I've said enough on that. So I just, I'm just reaching out to you guys just to find a way, and I kind of see it suitable in the FTEs, that if we just increase that gives everybody an opportunity within the staff.
Well, if you just increase the FTEs in from general and move them over to that doesn't do anything to the wages. It just moves where the money comes from. What we need to figure out is how to pay more for the FTEs that are being used in utility funds. So if they spend 50% of their time in utility and they get and you find a way to give a 4% increase or whatever in utilities, will the billing system be able to do that?
So the easiest way to do it straight across the board, if you're going to do something along those lines where you're gonna do a 2% COLA and you want to make available the step increase, quite frankly, is to do a transfer in from water and a transfer in from sewer into the general fund that would cover what that amount would be. And then everything else gets it gets their step in their.
Transfer in for the FTEs.
Correct.
And do we have those numbers as what the differences would be? Like if everybody got a 2% or everybody got a 3%? They
So
got their step increase.
2% is, I think 2.9% is what the feds are saying this year.
Blue and yellow, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're looking at the difference between, so for example, a step one, a grade 2, step 1, utility worker 1. Step 1 is $19.68 an hour. If you gave them a 2% increase, they're gonna be at $20.07. So I can do the calculations, and the reality of it is that at this moment in time, because the budget has been given to everybody, if you wanted me to email everybody with what the upgraded amounts would be per department, I could do that.
But this number is only taken in your wage. It's not taken in your additional to your PERS or anything like that as well, right? Or is that?
So that's only the wage. That's not going to include, so then what I would need to do is I would need to go to this first 66. And I would update all of these salaries that are down here, and then that will auto-populate everything.
Calculations.
Yes,
I would appreciate that.
I can do that.
You do it by the end of the week.
I could probably do it tomorrow. No, I have to leave early tomorrow, sorry.
Week is good.
I'm track coaching tomorrow.
You have a stopwatch
I got lots of stopwatches. And I've got javelins.
and a good whistle, right?
I don't need a whistle. I scream from my diaphragm.
You also have the starter stuff, so a chance to really pay
Yeah.
attention.
It was late.
Yeah.
Jason agrees, we change it from 2% to 3%, because 2% is not enough the way stuff has gone up.
Yeah, if we leave it at, you're talking about a COLA,
Yeah.
if we do that at 2%, then they're still losing money. It should at least match what the federal, if the federal is gonna be 2.8,
And they barely took fuel and everything else out of it, so it's
Yeah,
really like
3%.
5%, but
3%, I think would probably cover.
it's gonna come out of your budget though, or you.
Well, we have to, I mean, in my opinion, we have to do something to retain. That's the thing. I mean,
And then
I
they'd still
hate
be
to-
eligible for step increases if.
right.
So have, okay.
I mean, I think you have a really good, hardworking staff all the way through, you know, and you just want to retain and keep building off of it. So however we can adapt or kind of manipulate, if that's a term I can use here, to make that happen, we have to make it happen. So I hate to put more work on Kara, but I think it's a positive, and I think everybody's in agreement.
Well, and then, yeah, I hadn't thought of transferring the funds back over to general. That makes perfect sense. You know, for whatever you need.
And if everything works out like the grants and this and that we were talking about, then you should be able to transfer that back out.
Yeah.
Pretty.
That's a good point, even with that FEMA grant, I mean, that's a,
The whole of this budget includes all that grant money as well?
Yes,
That's how we got the 10,419.
10 million.
And then
10 million.
10 million.
Yeah. It includes the grants. So the $3.1 million grant from FEMA, 90 from FEMA, the 350 from Business Oregon, and the 192 from the Merkley.
So how do we set if we don't get all those grants?
So here's the thing, is if we
Does our
don't,
budget go in the toilet?
no, the reality of it is if you don't get those grants, we haven't started those projects. Those projects will not start unless we get that money. They are contingent on the money coming in. Except for the Merkley, we'd have $150,000 set aside for the tie line feasibility study if we need to start that if we don't get the Merkley. However, the FEMA is outside of our realm of cost, just as it is.
Right.
Fiscal capability.
So if we don't get the FEMA, then
We
that
don't get a
project
tank.
doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And you don't spend any money.
Yeah.
So, what is the preference for people? Do you want to get those numbers and have one more meeting so we can kind of look over everything, finalize everything at that meeting? Do you want to, vote on the budget tonight as amended? Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of, so we need another meeting is what we're saying.
Absolutely.
Okay,
So next week on the 29th, Angie, is that what we were thinking?
What day of the week?
It's Tuesday.
In the evening.
We could probably set it earlier.
I can't.
You're good.
I have that.
Really?
That.
Because I can't,
There's no change.
all the agenda now.
What about, what about, well, you can't do Monday either,
No, I'm on council.
right?
I'm in.
Is the
I mean-
OGEC class, the
Next
OGEC class?
I can't do Wednesday.
So next week doesn't sound good for anybody.
Okay,
Well, it's good for me.
The reality of it is that in regards to the discussion that we're having that creates the second meeting, an extra week wouldn't be the worst thing, just because of some things that are happening sort of behind the scenes.
so what about,
If there's notice periods that I have to meet, so
Yes.
your hearings would change, that would mean, rather than having the hearings on the council dates like they are, the council would have to come in and have hearings on different dates, so there'd be more meetings.
If I may, it wouldn't be unusual to have that public hearing in June at the same council meeting that you adopt the budget at. So you could push the public hearing back to June meeting and adopt the same time. You just better have your budget put together because you're starting to run out of time in terms of if there's some kind of big revision.
are we saying that no day next week is gonna work?
The 29th
You're gonna
sound
be
good.
gone.
Well, I can zoom in.
Oh,
I mean, maybe,
true.
I'm gonna be in Florida, 3-hour time difference, but don't keep me up till midnight.
yeah, what about May 6th? Oh, that's still a Tuesday.
The 29th's not good for anybody. Is that what you said?
Chris said that she's gonna be in Florida. She can zoom it, but she doesn't wanna be up till midnight. So we have to have this, I mean,
Shorter. anyway.
yeah. Shay has a problem with Tuesdays because he's supposed to be at work. He's scheduled on Tuesdays.
And yeah, well, I just haven't been there in 2 weeks in a row, so. I mean, if we skip, I mean, I have to show up at some point. You know,
So-
Another day?
I mean, we could look at trying to do something on a Sunday night. It doesn't have to be a Tuesday. Sunday night, work for anybody?
I don't care.
I don't.
You mean this coming Sunday, the 27th or the 4th?
Angie, tell us what we have to do.
Prepare for that. If we're pushing everything back to the June, that should work. The
The 27th or the
hearing and
4th?
the adoption on the same date, then that gives us extra time.
Let's say the 4th.
May 4th? Does that work for everybody?
What day of the week is that?
It's a Sunday.
Be with you?
6 p.m.
Maybe.
Can we do it earlier?
I mean, if it's a Sunday, we can do it yeah.
Doesn't matter.
whatever time on Sunday is fine by me.
I don't have to.
So Sunday, May 4th. At,
2 o'clock in the afternoon. How's that sound? 1 o'clock? Noon?
1 o'clock, so everybody.
I'm one person out of 12 or whatever, so.
Okay, Chris is at work till 3. How
You are?
long does it take you to get here?
15 minutes?
3:30?
3:30?
11 miles.
Perfect. 3:30?
3:30, May 4th.
Yeah, Sunday, May 4th. So I will do the calculations on, I need to know what you guys are,
So just a quick recap. So we need to find out if we can transfer the economic development funds, correct? I mean, I think
Yes.
we're okay, but
So-
I want to verify that.
I think Paula and I discussed a little bit of that. I don't want to be on whatever with it, but I know where the confusion is on that.
okay, so question, we'll just double check.
Transfer ins and transfer outs for all of the money coming in from the economic development and other funds.
Transfers,
You know, line items
Yes.
showing payback schedules.
transfers for reserves.
Yeah.
I've got the sidewalk situation, and then
Adding 3%.
are we saying 3%?
For COLA?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I would say. At least 2.8.
Let's go 3.
3% and a step possibility.
Well, that's.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's I can budget in a step, yeah.
yeah, okay.
I mean, if we budget it in, doesn't mean it has to be spent.
Yeah, that's up to the council.
Such a.
We don't do that here, so.
And I don't mean to be picky, but can we update page 11 so we know the budget? What we're doing in this budget?
Yes, I just wrote on my page 11 what to update on that, so we will definitely do that.
Thank you.
And then I guess my last questions are gonna be in terms of numbers. How are we feeling about adding a $2 fee to people's city services bill?
For the parks, I think it's totally, that's fine.
That has to go
As
with
much
your
council
council.
as they put on when you get the police fee and.
I'm gonna bitch about whatever we do.
But the stormwater, there wasn't all that with the stormwater.
That's the only one they don't pay, they lose their water bill, I mean, they get the water shut off, right?
The park, we just had a brand new subdivision go in next to the park, and while our public works people are doing stuff at the park, there's been no major improvement, right? And so where the other subdivision had to put in their own park. So I think that might cause some community concern and stuff too. It would for me. I mean, why am I paying extra $25 a year for a park, but that whole subdivision just went in using the same park that we've always had, right? Nothing new, so.
Well, they'll be paying it too, I mean.
Well, they-
Yeah, they will.
Okay, fee, so.
Yeah, they paid a SDC for the park.
Right, but nothing's happened to that park, right?
Right.
Nothing's been.
No upgrades have been made
Yeah.
at this point
Money
in
for the
time.
budget, let's budget it in, and then it's
I
up to
don't
the
know,
council to vote it.
fix the plumbing,
It's time.
the toilets are working again.
But,
Maybe we ought to put line item for.
but
repair of
you've
the
also
park
had,
from,
talked about upping the police
Medicaid.
service fee, or is that?
So
something
that
that's
was,
in-
that was something that we were talking about discussing too, and some of these revenue updates are things that, were looked at straight across the board that other communities similar to ours are doing, and others of them were looking at in relation to income revenue that's brought in and service that's provided, essentially. Which is why when we discussed the parks thing, I mean, we have a public works department that provides a lot of service to our parks. And there's really no revenue that's brought in specifically for the parks other than the $1,400. So that being said, I know Shelley was talking about adding $5 more to the police service fee and making it a $10 fee. I personally think that you can fee people to death.
Mhm.
And the number is not gonna be up to me to determine. That's just my opinion now.
And it also has to be reviewed by council.
Yes. All of it has to be reviewed by council.
I'd like to also say that the Yamhill Community Club is also providing a lot of upkeep to the park in.
Sometime.
Did they have it?
Donations and work.
What did they do?
About that.
They haven't in some time.
They bring in a lot of the geez, what am I trying to say? The stuff that's underneath the slides and stuff, the
Bark chips.
bark chips and the stuff.
I hate to be a stickler, but in the last almost 4 years, they've brought in probably $500 worth of bark chips.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Have you
that-
seen those bark
That
chips?
was, no, that wasn't what they said at their last
Well.
meeting, yeah.
I can tell you firsthand, that's it. And we, as public works staff, did all the labor to put in the bark lights. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame.
So, yeah, we haven't seen, I'm not gonna get into that,
Mhm.
but so anyways.
Okay,
All right.
Yeah.
are we all set?
Well, so are we gonna do anything with the police service fee? Are
The
we gonna-
council has to review it. It
Oh,
has to be
council,
brought,
okay,
it has to be.
before we can even think about it, okay. Now I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
I previously did not understand what you're saying.
We're gonna add more to that.
It's in the resolution.
Announcing the time again is Sunday, May 4th at 3:30
It's
p.m.
already.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay,
It's up to him, but.
done. See you on the fourth.
Adjourned.
We can make a motion.
Should we have seven?